During dinner that night, I watched my son drop his fork 3 times. He couldn't look me in the eye. He couldn't even look at the cup of coffee his wife had just placed in front of me. "Go ahead, Dad. It's still your favorite." That warm smile never left her face. The moment the cup reached my lips, my phone buzzed. A text from my grandson's girlfriend. I read it, then set the phone down slowly and raised my eyes. My son had gone white as a sheet. His wife, though, kept right on smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. Welcome to His Hidden Revenge. Before we begin, a quick note: some details in this story have been shaped for narrative purposes, and any resemblance to specific real people or events is purely coincidental. What matters is the truth at the center of it. If stories like this one speak to you, I'd love it if you tap subscribe so the next one finds its way to you. And before I take you in, drop one word in the comments that captures where your head is right now. Just one word. I'll be reading them. The question came on a Tuesday morning in November, wrapped in the kind of innocent small talk that makes you miss the blade until you're already bleeding. Actually, let me back up. Start from the Monday before. My name is Gerald Grover, 68 years old, retired history teacher who spent 38 years at Lincoln High School in Columbus before I hung up my chalk 5 years ago. My wife, Corinne, passed 3 years back, cancer quick and merciless. Since then, it's been me, this house, and a morning routine that could set your watch by. That Monday morning in early November, I woke at 6:30 like always. The house was quiet in that particular way. Only people who live alone understand not peaceful exactly, more like waiting. I made my way downstairs, flipped on the kitchen light, and got the coffee maker going. The smell of brewing Maxwell House filled the small space, rich and familiar. Through the window above, the weak autumn sunlight came filtering through the neighbor's maple tree, throwing long shadows across the backyard. I poured my first cup at 7:15. Black, no sugar. Corinne used to say, I drank it like punishment. I told her I drank it like a man who'd spent nearly 4 decades teaching teenagers. You learn to appreciate bitter things. The kitchen was warm. The coffee was good. I stood at that window, watching a squirrel bury something out in the yard, and my mind drifted to grading papers in that same spot for 38 years, to Corinne humming while she made breakfast, to the way a house can feel both hollow and crowded with ghosts all at once. That morning felt like every other Monday. It wasn't. The knock came at 7:45. I wasn't expecting anyone. Velma Pringle was standing on my porch when I opened the door, wearing that easy smile she'd carried for all 12 years she'd lived next door. 65 years old, gray hair kept short, always dressed like she had errands waiting. Ours was the comfortable kind of relationship built on proximity and mutual respect. She borrowed my ladder, I borrowed her hedge trimmer. We talked about weather and property taxes and never pushed past that. "Morning, Gerald," she said, her breath puffing small clouds in the November chill. "Saw your light on. Got a minute. Of course. Coffee? No. She was on her way to the store. Just wanted to check that everything had turned out all right." I blinked. Everything with what? "Whatever your daughter-in-law was planning," Velma said, smiling a little wider. "She stopped by back in September, must be 2 months ago now. Asked about your schedule. When you usually get up, when you're home, during the day, your routines. Said she was putting together something special for you and wanted to make sure she timed it right." My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. "She asked you about my schedule." "Well, yes." Velma's smile flickered slightly, picking up something in my tone. Thought it was sweet, honestly. A daughter-in-law going to that kind of trouble for her father-in-law. She was very specific about it, wanted to know when you'd definitely be home alone. I kept my face neutral. 38 years in a high school classroom teaches you many things. One of them is how to keep your expression still while your mind is running hard. That was thoughtful of Renata. I said, my voice even. "When exactly did she come by?" "Oh, let me think. Early September, maybe the first week. I remember because I'd just gotten my fall mums planted." Velma tilted her head. "She never mentioned it to you. Must have slipped her mind. Well, I'm sure whatever she has planned will be lovely. Your son's lucky to have found such a caring woman." I smiled, closed the door, and stood with my back pressed against it, coffee cup still in my hand, while something cold, something that had nothing to do with November, settled in my chest. How many times had I caught students lying to my face by watching their hands, their eyes, the way their feet shifted when they thought they were safe? How many times had I smiled and nodded while some kid spun me a story about why their homework wasn't in? And I just knew, from 38 years of practice, they were feeding me a line. You develop instincts. You learn to read what people leave out. Renata had asked my neighbor about my schedule. Not me, my neighbor, in September, 2 months ago. I walked back to the kitchen, set my cup on the counter, and looked out at that same backyard, same maple tree, same morning light. But something had shifted. The coffee tasted different now, metallic almost. If Renata wanted to plan a surprise for me, why not simply ask me? Why go to my neighbor to map out when I'd be home alone? Why be so precise about my routines, my habits, my vulnerabilities? You teach American history for nearly 4 decades. You learn one thing above everything else. People rarely do anything without a reason. Every action has a motive. Every question has a purpose. When a student asks if you'll be in your classroom alone after school, they're not making conversation. They're planning. Renata had been planning something since September. Something that required her to know exactly when I would be home alone, unguarded. And she had never said a word. Not once in 2 months. No surprise appeared. No gift came, just silence. I stood at that kitchen window, the Columbus autumn cold seeping through the glass, both hands wrapped around a cup that had gone lukewarm. The squirrel was gone. The yard was empty. The house was quiet in that waiting way. It always was these days. My daughter-in-law had been gathering intelligence on my daily life, methodically, secretly 2 months ago. Why? I taught history for 38 years. I taught students about wars that started with small questions about murders disguised as accidents, about plans that took months to put in motion. I taught them that patterns matter, that details matter, that when someone needs to know, when you're alone and vulnerable, you had better ask yourself why they need to know. And the first lesson history ever teaches, the one that echoes through every war, every betrayal, every tragedy I covered in that classroom, is this: nothing happens by accident. I set down my coffee cup and started paying attention. My son had stopped meeting my eyes about 6 months ago, but I didn't understand why until that Tuesday afternoon when he sat in my living room and lied to my face. Nolan arrived at 3:30. I'd been watching the clock since Velma's visit, cataloging everything, with the same methodical focus I used to bring to lesson planning. My son, 45, now though the gray at his temples made him look older, came through my door carrying a forced smile that never touched his eyes. He'd always been a good-looking kid, took after Corinne's side of the family, but something about him looked hollowed out these days, worn thin. Hey, Dad." The hug was quick and stiff, nothing like the easy way we used to hold each other. Sorry it's been a few weeks. Work's been crazy. No apology needed. I gestured toward the old armchair, the one he'd claimed as his spot since he was a teenager. "Sit. Want coffee?" "No, I'm good." He sat, but his posture was all wrong, perched on the edge like a man ready to bolt. His phone came out immediately and landed on his thigh. His right index finger began tapping the armrest. Tap, tap, tap. I'd seen that exact gesture 1,000 times. Junior year, when Dewey Strickland sat in my classroom, trying to explain why his Civil War essay hadn't materialized. Senior year, when Bet Haverford swore up and down she hadn't cheated on the final. The finger tap was fear, pure distilled fear dressed up as restlessness. "How's the real estate business treating you?" I asked, settling back in my own chair. "Fine, Dad. Everything's fine." His eyes moved to his phone, then to the wall behind my head, never to my face. "Just busy. You know how it is." "I do know." I kept my voice easy. His finger tapped faster. "The market's strong right now, isn't it?" I pressed. "Friend of mine mentioned property values are up in Columbus." Yeah, it's good." He checked his phone again. Nothing on the screen I could see. He was looking for a way out. "Listen, Dad, I can't stay long. Renata's got dinner planned." "And how is Renata?" The tapping stopped just for a beat, then came back double time. "She's great. Good. Really good." He wasn't looking at me. "She hasn't stopped by in a while. She's been busy too. Work stuff. 38 years in a classroom teaches you to read the body, not the mouth." That restless tapping finger told me everything. Nolan's eyes swept every corner of the room, the lamp, the window, the far wall, anywhere but my face. I'd watched students do exactly this across a desk for nearly 4 decades. The fidgeting, the averted gaze, the body desperately hunting for somewhere safe to land. It never pointed toward innocence. My son was lying to me. The same kid I'd steadied on his first bicycle, sat beside through algebra problems, cheered for at graduation. That man was perched in my living room, manufacturing stories, his hands trembling with the effort. He wouldn't look at me, couldn't. His focus stayed anchored to some neutral patch of wall, some spot that asked nothing of him. "Well," I said, keeping my voice level. "Tell her I said hello." He was out the door 10 minutes after that. One more rigid embrace, a few vague promises about coming around sooner, and then his car was pulling away. Through the window, I watched him sit, parked at the curb for a solid 3 minutes, engine off, head bowed, both hands white-knuckling the steering wheel before he finally drove off. Whatever he was carrying it had him petrified. Wednesday came and went in a state of heightened vigilance. I monitored everything. Mail nothing out of the ordinary, phone silence. I prepared my own food, drank only water from the tap that I drew myself. The caution felt almost absurd, but Velma's words wouldn't leave me alone. Renata had been mapping out my daily life. Nolan was lying through his teeth. Something was in motion. I just couldn't see its shape yet. That changed at 11:07 p.m. Wednesday night. I was propped up in bed, deep into a biography of Eisenhower I'd been working through for weeks when the nightstand lit up. I reached for the phone, half expecting junk mail or a weather alert. Adrienne Falcone's name was on the screen. Adrienne was 18, a college freshman with a sharp mind. I'd known her since she began dating my grandson 3 years back. When she was 15 and her parents' marriage was dissolving into wreckage, I'd sat with her through it. Hours of conversation about the rage, the grief, the confusion. She wasn't the kind of young woman who fired off dramatic texts in the middle of the night. The message ran exactly 12 words. "Don't drink anything they give you for the next few days. I am serious. I am sorry if I am wrong." I read it 3 times, called her immediately voicemail, called a second time, voicemail again. The screen cast a pale light across the ceiling. Those 12 words seared into me like something pressed against a hot iron. Don't drink anything they give you. They. Not Renata alone, not Nolan. They more than one person, an arrangement, a coordinated plan. I am serious. And she was. In 3 years, Adrienne Falcone had never played games with words. She didn't exaggerate for effect or reach for drama. Every time she'd spoken to me, she'd meant precisely what she said. I am sorry if I am wrong. The uncertainty was there, but underneath it real fear. Fear sufficient to make a teenager reach out to her boyfriend's grandfather at 11 at night, knowing she might look foolish. I climbed out of bed and went downstairs, found the old evaluation notebook from my teaching years untouched for 5 years since I retired, pulled a pen from the desk drawer, and sat down in the dark. My hand had a faint tremor as I wrote. Wednesday, November 11th, 2022. 11:07 p.m. Received warning from Adrienne Falcone. Text message. Don't drink anything they give you for the next few days. I am serious. I am sorry if I am wrong. Called twice. No answer. Cannot reach her. I set the pen down, read it back then, added a final line. That girl never speaks recklessly. In 3 years, not once. Sitting there in the unlit room, with that notebook, something settled over me with the weight of stone. Velma's casual mention, Nolan's hollow performance in my armchair, and now Adrienne's midnight warning, they weren't separate incidents. They were one story. Someone intended to poison me, and the people closest to me were part of it. Sleep didn't come. I stayed at the desk until the sky began to lighten, staring at those lines I'd written, trying to inhabit a version of reality where my own family had decided I should die. At 6:47 Thursday morning, while my coffee was still sitting too hot to sip, my phone buzzed against the kitchen table. Another message from Adrienne. This one had no text, only an image. I opened it. Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Policy number ML884722019WI $1 million. My name across the top. Beneficiary Nolan Grover, son. I'd purchased that policy 5 years ago in the months after Corinne died. Straightforward life insurance meant to cover Nolan for final expenses, medical bills, whatever the house might need. Routine. Except there was a page attached that I had never signed, never agreed to, never seen. Accelerated Death Benefit Rider. Added September 15th, 2022. 2 months ago, the same window when Renata had been standing on Velma's porch asking about when I was home alone. I enlarged the image and read. The language was dense and lawyerly. In the event the insured is diagnosed with a terminal illness, with a life expectancy of 12 months or less, as certified by a licensed physician, the beneficiary may elect to receive up to 80% of the death benefit value in advance. 80% of $1 million, $800,000. And below the clause, a signature, Gerald J. Grover. My name, my policy, my account number from 2018. But not my hand. I've written my signature the same way for 68 years. The G loops high, the J barely grazes the baseline. What I was looking at was too controlled, too measured. The G truncated, the J crossed with the deliberate care of someone who had practiced. Someone had studied my handwriting, grafted a rider onto my policy, and built a legal pathway to drain my life insurance payout. While I was still walking around, contingent only on a doctor's written declaration that I was terminal. I sat with that image for a long time. An accelerated death benefit rider means you don't have to wait for a man to die. You just need a physician to confirm he's dying. 12 months or less. That specificity wasn't coincidence. It was architecture. And whoever drew up this architecture understood insurance law at a professional level. Not Nolan. My son has never voluntarily read a financial document in his life. He phones me at tax time every year just to get through the basics. Whoever engineered this had expertise and knew precisely how to dress theft in legal clothing. I opened the notebook again. Second entry, Thursday, November 12th, 2022, 6:47 a.m. Adrian sent photo of life insurance policy. Accelerated death benefit rider, added September 15th, 2022. Signature forged. They need me certified terminally ill by a physician. They need me dying. They need it documented. I stopped there and read that sentence back. They need it documented. A physician's certification, which meant somewhere in this plan a doctor had a role to play. 38 years, teaching World War II. History leaves its mark on how you think. I've stood in front of classrooms and laid out how ordinary people once cornered by fear and debt and desperation cross lines they swore they never would. How the pressure builds until what seemed unthinkable starts to feel like the only remaining option. I understood the mechanism. I just never expected to be the target of it. I had to look at my son directly. That afternoon, I drove to 1400 South Champion Avenue, a neighborhood that had ambitions it hadn't quite grown into yet. Nolan's house occupied a corner lot, a plain ranch-style place with a for sale sign that had been weathering out front for 8 months. I pulled up across the street and left the engine running. Sat there in my gray Camry, hands on the wheel, turning over what I might possibly say. That's when a man came up the front walk, Burl Maddox. I wouldn't have a name for him until later. At that moment, he was simply a broad-shouldered man in his 50s expensive jacket, the kind of build that said he'd spent years in rooms where politeness wasn't currency. He carried himself like someone for whom refusal had never been a serious option. Now, Nolan pulled the door open before the knock came. He'd been watching the street. They stood together on the porch, and the man's voice was loud enough to reach me through glass. End of December, no more extensions. You understand me? Nolan's shoulders dropped. His whole frame seemed to compress. He nodded at the ground. I understand, he said, barely audible. I'll have it by then, I promise. Promises don't mean anything to me. Money does. December 31st, all of it. Or we move to less pleasant collection methods. The man turned and walked back down the steps, got into a dark blue pickup truck, and was gone. Nolan didn't follow him inside with his eyes, didn't retreat through his own front door. He just remained on that porch as November rain began coming down, arms hanging head, dropped completely still, not sheltering from it, not moving at all. My son stood in the rain like a man who had already gone under, and I sat in my car across the street knowing there was no line I could throw him. He'd made whatever choices had brought this to his door. How deep was the debt? How many months had he been at the mercy of people like Burl Maddox? And how far gone did a man have to be before his father's death started looking like a solution? I watched him stand there unmoving for 10 minutes. He never stepped inside, never lifted his head. Eventually, I shifted into reverse, eased away from the curb, and drove home. Confronting him wasn't an option, not yet. Not before I understood exactly what had been set in motion, and not without something solid in my hands. But the shape of the pressure was becoming clear. End of December, 6 weeks out. 6 weeks to produce money he plainly didn't have. $800,000 from an accelerated death benefit would wipe that slate clean in a single transaction. I sat in my gray Camry watching my son stand motionless in the November rain, and for the first time, I could see the full geometry of the trap he'd walked into. I have spent 38 years teaching students about what happens when pressure builds past a human being's threshold. I never imagined I'd be applying that lesson to my own son, But understanding a man's reasons doesn't mean you let him act on them. Friday morning, I tailed Nolan to a storage facility and opened a door into his secrets. The combination lock gave on the third attempt. My grandson, Theo's birthday, November 15th, 2006. And even as the lock clicked, I knew I was about to see something that couldn't be unseen. Nolan had pulled out of his driveway at 8:47 a.m. I'd been sitting down the block since before sunrise, thermos of coffee and the cup holder notebook on the passenger seat watching. When his car moved, I eased in behind him, keeping my distance. 3 decades with teenagers had made me patient. He drove west to Guardian Storage on North High Street, long rows of orange roll-up doors, concrete and cold light. I left my car 4 aisles over, stayed low, and tracked him in the rearview mirror. Nolan went straight to Unit 247, punched a code into the keypad, and the door rattled up. He stepped inside. 23 minutes later, he came back out. Even from that distance, I could see what the visit had done to him. His shoulders had dropped. His gait was heavier. He moved like a man who just stood over his own grave. He got in his car and left. I waited another 20 minutes, made certain he wasn't doubling back, then climbed out across the lot and planted myself in front of Unit 247, with my notebook tucked under one arm and the clear knowledge that what I was about to do was probably against the law. I didn't care. The combination lock caught the thin November light. 4 digits. I gave myself 3 tries before good sense would force me to leave. 3 attempts, I said quietly. If the third one fails, I walk away. First try, Nolan's birthday, 0317, March 17th, 1977. Nothing. Second try, Corinne's birthday, 0622, June 22nd, 1952. Still nothing. Third try. Final chance. I thought about the look on my son's face when he'd walked out of here, hollowed guilty diminished. What would he reach for? What mattered enough to protect? My fingers found the numbers. 1115, then 2006. November 15th, 2006. Theo's birthday. My grandson. The lock opened. I stepped inside Nolan's nightmare. The unit was small, 10 by 10 feet roughly. Bare concrete floor and walls, a single fluorescent tube buzzing overhead. The cold in there had weight to it, the kind that finds the gaps in your coat and doesn't leave. 3 cardboard boxes were stacked in the corner. I pulled the door down behind me, not all the way, left a crack for air, and the little light it let in, then turned to the boxes. Box 1. My hands were steadier than they had any right to be as I lifted the lid. Inside documents. My documents. Copies of my will. The house deed, 2 years of bank statements, credit card records, the complete Metropolitan Life policy. My entire financial picture sorted into labeled folders. Someone had gone through every number, calculated my precise worth living versus dead. Box 2. I stopped breathing. A small glass vial, unlabeled clear liquid, 3 syringes in sterile packaging, a box of latex gloves, and beneath it all, a spiral-bound notebook with a green cover. I stared at that vial, at those syringes laid out with clinical tidiness, at the latex gloves in their neat stack. This was not desperation. This was not a moment of weakness dressed up as a plan. This was a system. Box 3 photographs, dozens of them printed on plain paper, date stamped in the corner. Me at the grocery store, September 8th. Me collecting my mail, September 12th. Me leaving a doctor's appointment, September 19th. Me at the library, September 24th. Someone had been shadowing my life for months, recording my habits, verifying my patterns, capturing me on paper every time I thought I was unobserved. I thought of Renata asking Velma about my schedule back in September. This was the follow-up. Ground-level confirmation, making sure the intelligence was accurate before the next phase began. Detective Beauford would later tell me this matched what forensic psychologists call trophy documentation, organized offenders who keep detailed records not out of sloppiness, but out of a compulsion to own and revisit the process. It also had a practical function. Renata needed Nolan locked in. A written log of his role made him equally culpable insurance against him losing his nerve. My hands had a faint tremor as I opened the green notebook. The first page was dated September 15th, 2022, 8 weeks ago. The handwriting was precise and unhurried. Day 1. Administered initial dose with morning coffee during weekly Sunday visit. Subject showed no immediate awareness. Left house at 11:47 a.m. Returned home without incident. Will monitor for baseline reaction. I turned the page. Day 3. Subject complained of slight dizziness during phone call. Logged. Dose appears to be within safe initial range. Will maintain current level for 1 week before adjustment. Another page. Day 8. Subject mentioned fatigue to Nolan during Tuesday visit. Good sign. Systemic absorption occurring. Increased dose slightly with coffee brought to house. Subject grateful for the visit, unsuspicious. Page after page, clinical notes, dosing schedules, records of my symptoms, my complaints, the gradual deterioration of my body, cataloged with the detachment of a lab report. Someone had been poisoning me for 8 weeks and transcribing the results like a science experiment. I switched on my phone flashlight and held it close to the pages. The handwriting sharpened in the bright beam. Careful loops, a precise slant, every character formed with the same measured control. I had been reading that handwriting on Christmas cards for 17 years. Now I was reading it as it documented my murder. Not Nolan's loose scrawl, not the half-legible print of the boy who used to bring me homework questions at age 7. This was Renata's hand, my daughter-in-law. The woman who stood at the altar 17 years ago and called me Dad, who'd mailed me birthday cards with those same careful loops for nearly 2 decades, who'd handed me coffee and asked about my week with that warm smile still in place. She had written every entry, every dose, every cold observation about how effectively the poison was progressing. Day 22. Subject canceled lunch. Symptoms progressing. Dr. Fenwick confirmed his part. Documentation in place. Timeline December target. Dr. Fenwick, another name, someone else enlisted. December target 6 weeks out. I stood under that buzzing fluorescent light in the freezing storage unit holding my daughter-in-law's murder journal, and the picture completed itself. This was not Nolan's scheme. Renata was the architect, the one with insurance expertise and medical connections and the methodical discipline to put everything in writing. My son, terrified and debt-crushed and guilt-eaten, he had been pulled along in her wake. The woman who served me dinner and refilled my glass was the one writing increased dose slightly in steady, unhurried cursive. She was killing me and keeping detailed records of it. Before I left, I photographed every page of that journal, 37 entries, 37 days of systematic poisoning in my daughter-in-law's hand on my phone. I sat in my car with the engine running and the windows fogging up and scrolled through the images, and that was the moment I understood I was already dying. First entry, September 15th, 2022. Today was November 13th, nearly 9 weeks, 59 days. I went into my texts and found the thread with Dr. Prewett, my physician. October 3rd, 3 weeks in. I'd written experiencing some dizziness, lately unusual fatigue. Should I be concerned? His reply, common at your age, stay hydrated. We'll check blood pressure at your next physical in January. It wasn't age, it was poison. My hands shook against the wheel, the tremor I'd noticed 2 weeks earlier and blamed on the cold, the exhaustion that had made me cancel plans, the dizziness, the strange taste that had been shadowing everything I ate. 56 days of my body being taken apart piece by piece while I thanked Renata for the coffee she brought over. I scrolled to the final entry yesterday, November 12th. Day 56. Subject showing progressive symptoms. Timeline remains on track. Final dose plan for November 28th. Dr. Fenwick confirmed availability for certification November 30th. Accelerated benefit claim to be filed December 1st. Total timeline 74 days from initiation to payout. November 28th, 2 weeks from now. Final dose. 2 weeks to live unless I moved. That evening I stood in my workshop, the place where I had taught Nolan to use a lathe when he was 12, where Corinne used to perch on the stool and watch me work, and a thought arrived uninvited but perfectly clear. I could simply let it happen, make my coffee tomorrow morning the same as always. Let November 28th come and go. Let my son take what I leave. Let it end quietly. No confrontation, no police, no torching whatever remained of my family. I sat on the workshop stool, palms flat against the workbench, where I'd built things for everyone I'd ever loved. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I reached into the secret drawer, the one I'd cut into the bench 30 years ago, the one no one else knew existed. Inside Corinne's wedding ring, her reading glasses, and a letter. She'd written it 3 years ago, a week before the stroke. Left it with a note that said, "For when you need me, and I'm not there." I unfolded it. Her handwriting was looser than Renata's, warmer. "Gerald, I know you will want to give up when things become too heavy. Don't. Stay for those who need you. You were the best teacher those kids ever had because you never gave up on the ones everyone else quit on. Don't quit on yourself now. Stay. Fight. There are people who still need you. I refolded the letter carefully and slid it into my breast pocket. Then I looked at the wall. Last year's photograph, Adrienne and Theo in this workshop, both of them laughing. That girl who'd warned me. That boy who called me grandpa. Would Corinne understand what I was about to do? Would she forgive me for choosing to bring down our son in order to save myself? But Nolan wasn't the one who had designed this. Renata was. And there was still a chance I could pull my son back from the edge. Corinne was right. I needed to stay for that girl, for my grandson, for whatever piece of Nolan hadn't yet been swallowed whole. I stood up. The decision was made. At 10:30 that night, I slid into a corner booth at Denny's on South 3rd Street. Rupert Delacroix arrived 3 minutes later, 67 years old. My closest friend for 40 years, a retired Columbus Division of Police detective. He still carried that same unhurried solidity he'd built across 4 decades on the force. He sat down without a greeting, took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" I pushed my phone across the table, scrolled to the photos. All of them. He went through every one jaw-tightening image by image, the documents, the surveillance pictures, the journal. When he set the phone down, his voice was flat. How long? 8 weeks, started September 15th. You've seen a doctor, thought it was my age. Dizziness, fatigue. Dr. Prewett said it was nothing to worry about. It's not nothing. Rupert's tone had gone to cop mode, stripped of everything except the facts. Your daughter-in-law is poisoning you and keeping a written record of it like it's a lab study. A beat. This is not the work of a desperate person acting on impulse. Whoever drew this up has done it before. He held my gaze for a long moment. This isn't her first time. The noise of the diner fell away. All I could make out was my own heartbeat. What? Your daughter-in-law's name is in the CPD system, flagged from a Cincinnati PD inquiry in 2012. Files sealed, but the notation is visible. Rupert turned his phone toward me. Renata Grover, née Cullen. Cincinnati investigation, 2012. Her uncle, 71 years old, died of apparent myocardial infarction. She inherited $340,000. Cincinnati PD suspected foul play. Couldn't prove it. Case closed. Sealed. Insufficient evidence. The air in my chest wouldn't move right. She's killed before. Cincinnati thinks so. They just couldn't make it stick. Rupert pocketed his phone. Last time she walked away clean. This time will be different. I'll make sure of it. So what do we do? You go on living exactly as you have been. Don't face her down. Don't give her any sign that you know. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser and clicked his pen. We need video evidence, audio documentation of her administering the doses. I need 48 hours to pull the Cincinnati file and reach someone inside the division I trust. You need to stay alive and keep up the routine for 2 more weeks, as long as it takes. He met my eyes. Can you manage that? Can you drink the coffee she brings and smile while you do it? I thought of Corinne's letter pressing against my chest. Stay. Fight. Yes, I said, I can do that. We mapped it out on that Denny's napkin. Cameras, evidence chain. A Detective Beauford, someone Rupert trusted. When I drove home at midnight, one thing kept turning over in my mind. This isn't her first time. A 71-year-old uncle in Cincinnati. $340,000. A sealed file that said insufficient evidence. Last time she got away clean. This time, I wouldn't let her. Saturday morning, I woke with the knowledge that Renata had killed before. By Saturday afternoon, I knew precisely how she'd done it. The text from Adrienne landed at 9:47 Saturday morning, 2 attachments and 7 words that turned my blood to ice. I was brewing my own coffee beans I'd bought myself in a pot, only my hands had touched, when the phone buzzed. Adrienne's name on the screen, 2 images, 1 message. The first photo, a manila folder spread open on a desk. Metropolitan Life Insurance Company letterhead, showing clearly. Papers fanned out as if someone had been working through them. The accelerated death benefit rider, the same document I'd photographed in the storage unit now, captured on my son's home office desk. The second photo was darker, caught at an angle like a phone held low and hidden. The message beneath both images read, "Grandpa, they're talking about you like you're already dead. I'm sending you what I saw. Be careful. My hands went cold. I called her right then. She picked up on the first ring, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't talk long. I'm at your son's house. Came back this morning to pick up my textbooks. I left them here yesterday. I was walking past the office and heard voices. Whose voices? Renata and Nolan. The door was open a crack. I shouldn't have listened, but her voice dropped further. Grandpa, she was talking about money, about Burl Maddox, about you. Tell me exactly what you heard. Renata said Burl Maddox called this morning. She said end of December doesn't change. Nolan said they needed more time. Adrian stopped. I heard her breathing quick and shallow. Then Renata said, we don't have more time, but the old man does. Or, the old man has what we need. The old man? Not your father, not Gerald, not Dad. The old man as though I were something to be processed when the moment was right. I took the photos through the door crack. Adrian continued. The insurance file was right there on the desk. I saw your name. I had to warn you. Where are you right now? Still in the hallway. Go get your books and leave. Act like you didn't hear a word. I will. A pause. Grandpa, I'm scared for you. I know. Thank you for this. Now get out of that house. She hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, staring at those two photos. Renata's meticulous planning laid out on my son's desk, her voice in my head. The old man has what we need. $800,000 from the accelerated death benefit. That's what I amounted to in her accounting. Not a father-in-law, not family, just a figure on a balance sheet. My phone rang at 2 p.m. Rupert, no preamble. I got the Cincinnati file. You need to be sitting down. I already was. Tell me. Renata Cullen, born Cincinnati, 1971. Married your son in 1994 when she was 21. Her mother died when she was 16. Father was already out of the picture. She was taken in by her mother's brother, Virgil Cullen, the uncle who died. September 2012, 71 years old. Official cause of death, myocardial infarction. Rupert's voice was controlled, but tight. Renata was the sole heir. She inherited $340,000 in liquid assets plus a Hyde Park condo valued at another $200,000. And Cincinnati PD investigated. They did. A detective named Prewett, no connection to your doctor, ran the case. Here's what they turned up. Virgil Cullen was in solid health, regular checkups, no cardiac history. Then, in June 2012, 3 months before he died, neighbors noticed that Renata started coming around constantly. 2-3 visits a week, always bringing something. Casseroles, soups, baked goods. My stomach rolled. Always bringing food, just like Renata brought me coffee. The neighbors thought it was touching, Rupert went on. A niece looking after her elderly uncle, until he died suddenly in September. Then one of them called the department and said something felt wrong. What did the autopsy find? Heart failure consistent with myocardial infarction. But by the time they suspected foul play and pushed for toxicology, there was no viable tissue retained. The body had been cremated, Renata's request, processed fast. Convenient. Very. Cincinnati PD assembled a circumstantial case. Frequent visits with food and drinks. Sudden death, a large inheritance, rapid cremation. But without physical evidence of poisoning, the prosecutor wouldn't move forward. Case sealed in 2013. Notation, insufficient evidence to prosecute. You teach history long enough, you learn to recognize patterns. This wasn't merely similar, it was the same blueprint run twice. Cultivating trust with an elderly relative. Bringing food, bringing drinks. Watching the deterioration. Inheriting a substantial sum. Eliminating the body before anyone could look too closely. She'd done this to the man who had raised her, who'd opened his home when she had no one who trusted her with his daily life. And she'd walked away without consequence. Rupert, I said quietly, she's doing it again, the exact same playbook. I know, that's why we cannot let her finish it. His voice had an edge to it now. Last time she got away because there was nothing solid to hold. This time, there will be. This time, we're going to get proof video audio evidence that holds up in a courtroom. One more thing, Rupert said, setting down his phone. The Cincinnati file lists her birth name, the one she dropped after the investigation was closed. He angled the screen toward me. Delia Marie Harwick. That was who your daughter-in-law had been before she became Renata Cullen, then Renata Grover. I wrote it into my notebook. Delia Marie Harwick, the name she'd buried, the name she assumed nobody remembered. Before November 28th, he confirmed, "I'm reaching out to Detective Cecilia Beauford first thing Monday. She's with the Columbus Division of Police Homicide, handles family cases. I trust her. We'll need to move quickly." I looked at Adriane's photo on my phone once more. The insurance file sitting on my son's desk, the meticulous planning. Renata Cullen Grover had killed a 71-year-old man in Cincinnati, watched him decline slowly over 3 months, walked away with more than $500,000. The police had suspected her built a case, and she'd slipped free because there was nothing concrete to hold against her. "We're going to get proof this time," I said. "Yes," Rupert agreed. "We are." I ended the call and settled into my living room as the thin November afternoon light cut through the windows at an angle. Somewhere out there in this city, my daughter-in-law was putting the finishing touches on my murder, talking about me as though I were already gone, nothing more than a financial asset waiting to be cashed out. She'd done it before. She knew exactly how to dress murder up as natural causes, the last time she walked. I sat there holding my phone, staring at that photograph, and felt with complete clarity that I could not allow her to walk away again. Not this time. Never again. Sunday night, I discovered that stopping Renata wouldn't only mean saving my own life. It would mean shielding everyone who'd stepped up to help me. My grandson's call came at 8:47 Sunday evening, while I was warming leftover soup, and his opening words were, "Grandpa, I've been recording them." I set the pot down. "Theo, I've been recording Mom and Dad for 3 weeks. His voice was low and tight, speaking from his bedroom, most likely. "Wisconsin is one-party consent. I learned that in civics class. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal. And I'm one of the people living in that house. So, you've been recording your parents. I left my phone in the living room every time they talked privately. Acted like I was upstairs doing homework. I have 7 files, Grandpa. Nearly 4 hours total." I pulled out a chair and sat down at the kitchen table. My hands had started shaking. Not from poison this time. Something else entirely. "What's on them?" "Everything." His voice cracked just slightly. He was 16 years old, my grandson Adriane's boyfriend, and he sounded like 3 weeks had aged him 10 years. "The first one is from October 23rd. That's when Mom first brought it up. She'd told Dad about your life insurance policy, the accelerated benefit rider she'd had added, and about Dr. Fenwick agreeing to certify you as terminal. What did your father say?" A pause then. "No." I shut my eyes. He said, "We can't do this to Dad. Mom brought up Burl Maddox, the deadline. Dad said no again. There has to be another way. Mom kept at him. Dad said no a 3rd time. I can't kill my father. 3 times. My son had refused 3 times. When did he say yes? October 28th, 4th recording. Mom told him Burl Maddox had called. Said if they didn't come up with the money by December the 31st, he'd start with Dad's kneecaps and go from there. That's when Dad cracked. Theo's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He didn't say yes. He just stopped saying no, and Mom took that as a green light. 7 audio files, evidence from their own lips, and my son had said no 3 times before he went quiet. "Can you send them to me?" "Already done. Encrypted email, password is your birthday, plus Mom's maiden name. Grandpa, He stopped. I could hear him breathing, working to hold himself together. "I don't know what to do. She's my mom, but she's trying to kill you." "You did the right thing, Theo. You're the bravest kid I know." "I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm tearing my family apart." "Your mother did that. Not you. Never you." We ended the call. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and pulled down 7 audio files that would help put my daughter-in-law in prison and my son right alongside her. Evidence. Real, actual evidence. But the cost of that evidence was a 16-year-old boy who'd recorded his own mother planning a murder. Monday afternoon, Adrienne called me from her car. Her voice was different, frightened in a way I had never heard from her before. "I went back to pick up my calculus textbook," she said. "Renata was there. She asked me to come help her in the kitchen, just the 2 of us. What happened? She closed the door, didn't even turn around at first. Just stood there at the counter with her back to me. Then she said, 'You sent a message to Mr. Grover about insurance documents.'" My blood went cold. "What did you say?" "Nothing." I didn't say anything, but she kept going. She said, "You think you're protecting someone, but you have no idea what game you've stepped into. You don't understand what's at stake. I tightened my grip on the phone. Did she threaten you? Not me. Adrian's voice broke. Grandpa! She turned around and she had this little smile. And she said, your sister Jimena, she walks home alone every day from Lincoln Middle School, doesn't she? 14 years old, such a vulnerable age. I was out of my chair so fast it toppled behind me. She threatened your sister. She picked up her coffee mug, walked past me to the door, turned back and said, enjoy the rest of your day, Adriana. Like we'd just been talking about the weather. Adriana was crying now. She smiled when she said it. She smiled. Where are you now? In my car parked 2 blocks away. I can't go home yet. I can't. Jimena doesn't know any of this. She's just a kid. She walks home from school at 3:15 every day because I have debate practice and can't pick her up. If something happens to her because I tried to help you, nothing is going to happen to Jimena, I said, my voice coming out harder than I'd intended. I promise you, Adrian, nothing. How can you promise that you didn't see her face? She meant it, Grandpa. She would harm a 14-year-old girl to keep this buried. I had looked at Renata's face for 17 years, across Thanksgiving tables and Christmas mornings, watched her smile while passing food around, seen her embrace my son, seen her bring me coffee with those same hands that had poisoned her uncle in Cincinnati. And now she'd aim that smile at a child. Not just any child, a 14-year-old girl who knew nothing about life insurance or accelerated death benefits or murder. A girl whose only offense was having a sister brave enough to send a warning text. Listen to me, I said. Starting tomorrow, someone will be watching Jimena walk home from school. I'm calling Rupert right now. We're going to make sure she's protected. What if that's not enough? It will be because we're wrapping this up soon before Renata can hurt anyone else. After Adrienne hung up, I sat in my kitchen, picturing my daughter-in-law standing in that same room, smiling, while she threatened a child's safety. Jimena Falcone walked home from Lincoln Middle School every day at 3:15 alone, carrying a backpack too heavy for her small frame, thinking about homework and friends and whatever 14-year-old girls think about when they have no idea someone has marked them as collateral damage. And Renata Grover had just put a target on that child's back with a smile on her face, as though she were commenting on the weather. Within an hour of Renata threatening that child, my grandson made a decision that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Theo told me later what he'd seen from the top of the stairs. His mother threatening to harm a 14-year-old girl, her voice level and calm like she was talking about the weather. He said that in that moment, something inside him gave way. I believed him. I could hear it in his voice when he called. Theo told me what happened, how he'd come downstairs for a glass of water, how the kitchen door wasn't pulled shut all the way, how he'd frozen on the stairs when he caught his mother's voice steady and measured, speaking to Adrian. He heard every word. Your sister Jimena, she walks home alone every day from Lincoln Middle School, doesn't she? He stood there at 17 years old listening to his mother threaten a child, and something inside him broke. When Renata walked out of the kitchen, Theo flew down the stairs and out the front door, before Adrienne had even stepped out. He was waiting in her car at the curb when she came out, both of them, silent, both shaking. Adrienne got in the driver's seat, didn't start the engine, just sat with her hands resting on the wheel. Theo finally spoke. That was my mom, he said. My mom just threatened to hurt a little girl. Then he called me. His voice when I picked up was barely holding itself together. Grandpa, I heard the whole thing. Mom threatened Adrienne about Jimena. She said Jimena walks home alone from school every day, like it was a threat. My own voice went cold and level in a way I didn't recognize. Where are you right now? In Adrienne's car outside the house. You two get to my house immediately. Do not set foot back in that house. What, you heard me. Theo, get Adrienne and drive here now. You don't live there anymore. A pause. Then, okay. They were at my door 20 minutes later. Theo's eyes were red. Adrienne looked like she'd aged 10 years since Saturday. I sat them both down in the living room and made tea. They didn't touch it. I watched my grandson try to absorb the fact that his mother had become something he no longer recognized. I knew she was planning something, he said quietly. The recordings, the insurance paperwork. But I figured maybe Dad was the one driving it, that Mom was just... He stopped, but she threatened Jimena, a kid who has no idea any of this is happening. My grandson is 17 years old, and he had just lost something that doesn't come back. the capacity to look at his mother and see anything other than what she truly is. Tuesday morning, Rupert called at 7 a.m. "I found something," he said. "Reached out to an old contact in the PI world. Your daughter-in-law hired someone 3 days ago. Private investigator named Conrad Pruitt. She's having you watched." I straightened up in my chair. "Watched why?" "To confirm you don't suspect anything before they move on the final dose. She wants to be certain you're behaving normally, not getting ready to run or pick up the phone and call the police." I turned over the past few days in my mind. The tan sedan. I'd clocked the same car in 3 separate places and told myself I was being paranoid. What does this Pruitt look like? 52 white male drives a tan Ford Focus, runs a one-man shop out of the short north. Surveillance and background checks mostly. "I've seen that car," I said. "Tan sedan. Outside the grocery store, Sunday then, at the library yesterday." "That's him. Don't go near it. Don't give any sign that you know. Just act normal." We hung up. I sat at the kitchen table and thought about being watched, about Renata being so meticulous, so controlled that she'd hired someone to confirm her victim wasn't growing suspicious. That afternoon, I went out for a walk at the park near my house, testing a theory. The tan sedan was there, sitting about 50 meters away, with a clean line of sight to the walking path. A figure in the driver's seat watching. Conrad Pruitt parked in his tan Ford Focus. 50 meters back, a private investigator Renata had hired 3 days ago to trail me and verify I didn't suspect the murder plot before they moved on the final dose. I pulled out my phone and called Rupert. "The tan car," I said. "I can see it right now 50 meters behind me in the park. Don't look at it. Don't go near it." "I'm not going to avoid him, Rupert. I want to meet Conrad Pruitt face to face." "That's a terrible idea. If he reports back to Renata that you confronted him, he's going to report something either way. Right now, he's watching a retired man take an afternoon walk, nothing unusual. What if I give him something different to report? What are you thinking? What kind of person hires someone to watch an old man just to make sure he doesn't realize he's being murdered? Someone who's done this before. Someone who understands that the whole scheme depends on the victim never pushing back. A person so confident in her method that she pays someone to confirm the old man is acting appropriately docile. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that Renata expects me to be oblivious, shuffling through my days drinking poison coffee, getting weaker. What she doesn't expect is for me to walk straight up to her surveillance and introduce myself. You're going to approach him. Tomorrow, I'll walk right up to his window and start a conversation. Maybe he doesn't know what Renata is actually doing. Maybe he thinks he's looking into a routine family concern." I paused, watching the sedan through the trees. "Or maybe I can turn him." "That's an enormous risk. So is sitting still while she administers the final dose and a private investigator signs off that I wasn't suspicious. We've got 12 days until November 28th. Time to stop being prey." Rupert was quiet for a moment. "Then if you're going through with this, do it somewhere public with people around and record every word." "I will." I ended the call and kept walking. The tan sedan stayed put, just watching, logging my routine, building a report for my daughter-in-law on whether I seemed alert, whether I was acting normal, whether it was safe to go ahead and kill me. They say a hunted animal trembles and bolts. I'd spent enough years teaching students about World War II to know that sometimes the most dangerous prey is the one that pretends it doesn't know it's being stalked. Conrad Pruitt sat in his tan Ford Focus, thinking he was observing me. Tomorrow, I was going to walk up to his window and knock. Sometimes the boldest move is the one they never see coming. Wednesday morning, I walked up to the tan sedan and knocked on the glass. By Wednesday afternoon, I'd learned there are fates worse than death. I'd called Conrad Pruitt's number at 2:15 Tuesday afternoon and said 6 words that made him go silent for 10 full seconds. "I know you're tracking me, Conrad." The silence stretched out. I could hear him breathing. "Mr. Grover," he finally said, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know what you're talking about. Tan Ford Focus 3 days, Sunday at the grocery store, Monday at the library, Tuesday in the park. I'm 68, but I'm not blind." Another pause. "How did you get this number? Meet me for coffee. Brioso Coffee on North 4th Street, 30 minutes. Come alone." I hung up. He walked in 28 minutes later. I was already in the back corner booth when he arrived, recognition moving across his face the moment he spotted me. Conrad Pruitt looked different at 52 than he had at 17. Heavier through the middle gray, working into his temples, lines settled around his eyes. But I knew him. He slid into the booth, a restless energy coming off him in waves. "Mr. Grover," he said quietly. "It's been 38 years, Class 10B. I sat in the third row by the window. American History, 1986. You wrote a paper on Watergate that I still remember. A minus your conclusion was weak, a ghost of a smile. You said good research, weak thesis, rewrite, and resubmit. I rewrote it 3 times and got an A. We sat across from each other, teacher and former student, 4 decades, and a surveillance contract between us. Why are you following me?" "Conrad," he looked down. "Your daughter-in-law hired me 3 days ago. $3,000 a week to track your movements and report if you seem suspicious." "Suspicious of what?" "She said it was a family matter, that you might be getting confused, that she wanted to be sure you were safe. And you believed her." His jaw went tight. "No, I've been doing this 15 years. I know when someone's lying. But she's also threatening to report me over a disputed evidence case from 8 years ago. Chain of custody problem. Could cost me my license. Caught between money and blackmail. Same as my son. So you took the job, I took the job." He met my eyes. "What's really going on?" I showed him the photo of the journal, the poison, the careful systematic record keeping. "She's been poisoning me for 8 weeks, planning my murder. You're helping her confirm I'm not suspicious before the final dose." The color left his face. "Jesus Christ. You're helping someone commit murder?" "Conrad, unknowingly maybe, but that's what you're doing." He stared at the photograph's, hands unsteady. I had no idea." "I know, but now you do." I leaned forward. "So, here's my question. The same one I used to ask in class when we talked about Nixon, about Watergate, about people who knew crimes were being committed and stayed quiet. Do you want to do the right thing?" Conrad was quiet for a long moment. "You always said that. Do the right thing even when nobody's watching. I remember, Mr. Grover. I haven't forgotten. 38 years of teaching. And in the darkest stretch of my life, a former student remembered a lesson I hadn't even recalled giving. 'What do you need from me?' he asked. 'Keep taking her money. Keep following me, but report back to me instead. Tell her I'm acting normal. Buy me time. And the blackmail issue, I have a contact who's retired from the Columbus Division of Police. We'll handle it.'" Conrad nodded slowly. "Okay, I'm in." We shook hands across the table. A lesson from 1986, returning exactly when I needed it most. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in Rupert's office while he worked through every file from the storage unit. 3 monitors glowing, each showing a different cluster of folders. "Wait," Rupert said. "There's a second folder, a contingency file nested inside another directory. I missed it on the first pass." He clicked it open. "Oh, God," he whispered. He turned the monitor toward me. A psychiatric evaluation. What came next stopped me cold. Something had been put in place quietly, methodically, that I never could have anticipated. Before I tell you what it was, let me ask you this. If you discovered that someone close to you had been working against you in secret, would you confront them immediately, or would you pull back and build your case in silence? Official letterhead, capital square, Psychiatric Associates, patient Gerald James Grover, diagnosis progressive dementia with acute confusion. Memory impairment, declining executive function. Signed, Dr. Aldrich Fenwick, M.D., the same doctor from the journal, the one who would certify me as terminal. "Keep scrolling," Rupert scrolled. The evaluation cataloged symptoms, dizziness, fatigue, confusion, memory gaps, difficulty managing basic tasks. Every symptom from the journal, every symptom caused by their poison. Recommendation: patient requires 24-hour supervised care. Recommend legal guardianship be established immediately to protect patient's assets and welfare. Patient lacks capacity to make financial or medical decisions. "They don't need you dead," Rupert said quietly. "They just need you declared incompetent." Plan B was worse than murder. If the poisoning failed, they'd take every symptom the poison had produced and use it as evidence of dementia. Have me ruled mentally incompetent. Install Nolan as my legal guardian, hand him control of everything: the house, the bank accounts, the life insurance. And I'd still be breathing, sitting in some nursing home, clear-headed enough to understand exactly what was happening, but without a shred of legal power to fight back. Watching them spend my savings, sell off my home, strip every asset I had, while I sat in a wheelchair. Death would have been more merciful. Have you ever met Dr. Aldrich Fenwick? Rupert asked. Never. Not once. This evaluation is dated October 30th. 3 sessions listed. Says you presented with confusion and memory loss. I have never set foot in his office. Never exchanged a word with him. Pure fabrication. Rupert kept scrolling and found another document. A petition for emergency guardianship already drafted. Nolan Grover named as proposed guardian. Every form filled in and ready to file. They don't need me dead, they just need me declared insane. And I had handed them 8 weeks of documented symptoms from their own poison now repackaged as evidence of mental incompetence inside a fraudulent psychiatric file. When can they actually file this? I asked. Anytime. It's sitting there ready to go. If Plan A falls apart, if I survive, or they lose their nerve about murder, they pivot to Plan B. Commit you control, you drain you. I sat there looking at my own fabricated psychiatric evaluation, a diagnosis from a doctor I'd never met, built from symptoms induced by poison they'd been feeding me, designed to lock me away while they took everything. Plan B was worse than murder, because I would be alive to witness every moment of it. Plan B was worse than death, but knowing that didn't stop it. I had 27 days to make certain it never came to pass. Conrad Pruitt's call came through at 6:40. Wednesday evening, 8 words that transformed Plan B from an abstract horror into a ticking clock. The profile must be done by December 15th. I was still at Rupert's place when my phone rang, Conrad's name on the screen. I followed her this afternoon, Conrad said, no preamble. Your daughter-in-law to Dr. Aldrich Fenwick's office on East Broad Street. She was inside 40 minutes. You stayed outside. Positioned near an open window 3rd floor, but the building has a fire escape. I got close enough to record. He paused. You need to hear this. My phone buzzed. Audio file coming through. I put Conrad on speaker so Rupert could listen. The recording was muffled but intelligible enough. A man's voice, Dr. Fenwick presumably. Then Renata's voice sharp and impatient. The profile must be completed before December 15th. No delays. I need it ready to file the moment it's necessary. That's less than a month. I'm aware. Can you do it or not? I can have it finished by December 10th. But the fee, money isn't the concern, timing is. The recording cut off. Rupert and I sat in his office staring at my phone. December 15th, Rupert said quietly. 27 days from now. She's keeping both options alive, I said. Plan A poisoned me by late November. Plan B if I'm still standing or something unravels. File the dementia paperwork by mid-December. 2 timelines running in parallel. Maximum flexibility, minimum exposure. Rupert leaned back. This is professional-grade planning, because she's done it before. Send me the full recording, Conrad, Rupert said into the phone. And I need Dr. Fenwick's office information, who else works there, who has access to his files, everything. Already on it, Conrad answered. Sending now. 27 days, less than a month to pull together enough evidence to shut down both plans, prove the poisoning exposed the fraud, and save my life. The clock was running. Thursday morning, I called Theo and Adrienne to my house. They arrived at 9 o'clock, both looking like they'd slept about as well as I had. I sat them down in my living room. On the coffee table between us, 3 wireless cameras Rupert had dropped off at dawn, each no larger than a smoke detector, and a small backpack beside them. I'm going to ask to stay at your parents' house for a few days, I said, looking at Theo. I'll tell them I'm anxious, feeling alone, needing company. They'll say yes because they think I'm walking straight into their hands. Theo's eyes went wide. You're going to stay with them 3, maybe 4 days, long enough to get these cameras in place and start collecting video evidence of what they're doing. Where Adrienne asked, leaning in, kitchen hallway office. I pointed to each camera in turn. Rupert's equipment, wireless motion-activated feeding to a secure server he monitors, high-definition video and audio. They'll see you installing them, Theo said. Not if you help me. You still live there. You can move through the house without raising any alarm. I'll keep them occupied. You place the cameras. I looked at those 3 wireless cameras sitting on the coffee table, each no bigger than a smoke detector, and understood that this was it. The plan, the moment, the risk. Adrienne, I continued, you'll keep an eye on Jimena. Make sure she gets home from school safely. Conrad will keep up the external surveillance on Renata. Rupert coordinates everything from his end. Silence. I need to be clear, I said. This is a choice, both of you. If they discover what we're doing, if they catch Theo placing a camera, or figure out that I'm not the muddled old man I'll be performing, there will be consequences. Serious ones. Theo didn't waver. Grandpa, you don't have to ask. I'm in. Theo, I heard Mom threaten a 14-year-old girl. I've been recording their conversations for 3 weeks. You think I'm going to walk away now? His jaw was set resolute. I'm in, whatever you need. I looked to Adrienne. She met my eyes and I saw something I'd recognized over 38 years of teaching. The expression a student gets when they realize that doing the right thing is going to cost them something real. She threatened Jimena, Adrienne said quietly. My sister. That's why I can't step back. Not now. Not ever. 3 people. A 17-year-old grandson choosing his grandfather over his parents. An 18-year-old girl standing guard over her younger sister. A 68-year-old retired teacher about to walk deliberately into his own attempted murder. You spend 38 years teaching history. You come to understand that turning points don't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they're just 3 people in a living room saying yes. All right, I said. Here's the full plan. I laid out every detail. The phone call to Nolan, the performance. Anxious, fragile, in need of company. The arrival the next day. Camera placement over the weekend. The evidence gathering. The extraction plan if things went sideways. Theo took notes on his phone. Adrienne asked questions. We walked through it twice, then a 3rd time. When we were done, Theo picked up the backpack with the cameras. When do you call Dad? He asked. Tomorrow, noon. Rupert and Conrad will both be standing by. And if they say no, they won't. Renata wants me close and manageable, easy to dose. She'll convince Nolan to say yes. Adrienne stood. I'll start picking Jimena up from school today. Won't explain why. I'll just say I want to spend more time with her. Good. They left together. I watched through the window as they walked to Adrienne's car, both carrying the weight of what we were about to set in motion. I sat alone in my living room, staring at the empty coffee table where the cameras had been. Tomorrow, I would call my son, let my voice tremble. Just enough ask if I could stay for a few days, come across as lonely and vulnerable and a little afraid, and he would say yes, because Renata would tell him to. I would walk into my son's home, sleep under the same roof as the person planning to kill me, or worse, have me locked away. Drink the coffee they make, eat the food they set in front of me, and smile. Smile like a man who has no idea what's coming, while 3 wireless cameras recorded their every move. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is step into the trap and spring it from the inside. Thursday at noon, I walked into the trap. By Thursday evening, I confirmed I was sleeping under the same roof as a serial killer. I dialed Nolan's number at noon on Thursday with Rupert and Conrad both listening on conference. When Nolan picked up, I let my voice carry just enough of a shake to sound like a lonely old man. Nolan, it's Dad. Hey, Dad, everything all right? I drew a breath, made it audible, let the tremor settle in naturally. Son, I haven't been sleeping well the past few nights. The house feels too empty without your mother. I keep waking up at 3 a.m. and just sitting there in the dark. A pause. Let him hear it, the vulnerability. Could I come stay a few days, just for some company? I don't want to be a bother. Of course, Dad. But his tone caught me a half-beat's pause, then dead air. 3 seconds while my son put the question to my would-be killer. 3 seconds that stretched like 3 hours. I already knew the scene playing out on the other end. Nolan with his hand over the phone, eyes on Renata, waiting. Then back on the line. That's great, Dad. Really great. Come at 4 o'clock. Dinner will be on the table. You're certain I don't want to intrude? Not at all. We'd love to have you. See you at 4 o'clock. The call ended. Within seconds, my phone buzzed. Conrad texting from the tan Ford Focus parked down the street. She nodded when she heard. She is smiling. They think you're walking right into it. I set the phone on the kitchen table and released a long breath, the one I'd been holding through every second of that silence. The act had worked. Renata believed she had me right where she needed me. Now the hard part began. I pulled up at 4 p.m., overnight bag in hand. Nolan opened the front door, put his arms around me. The hug was wooden, the kind you give someone you've run out of things to say to. Good to see you, son. You too, Dad. Room's all made up for you. Head straight upstairs. Guest bedroom. Then Renata drifted in from the hallway, hands drying on a dish towel, smile dialed in to the exact right frequency, attentive, without being intense caring, without crossing into hovering. Gerald, it really is good to have you here. That house must feel so big and quiet on your own. I let my posture soften, eased into the role. It does. I appreciate this more than you know. Don't even think about it, she said, the smile holding perfectly still. Supper at 6. Go rest. The table at 6 p.m. looked like something out of a magazine. Chicken pot pie in a ceramic dish, golden crust steaming at the center. Roasted vegetables catching the candlelight. A loaf of bread still giving off heat, a dish of butter going soft beside it. 2 candles set between the serving bowls, flames perfectly still. A picture of domestic warmth. The feeling underneath it was something else entirely. We took our seats. Renata moved around the table with the ease of a practiced performer, serving, refilling, passing things before you thought to ask. Nolan barely touched his plate fork, dragging across the ceramic without purpose, eyes somewhere else. Theo sat directly across from me, gaze dropped, carrying the full weight of what he knew: the audio files, the cameras stuffed in a backpack 2 floors above us, every detail of the plan laid out that morning. And through all of it, Renata smiled. Midway through the meal, I placed my spoon on the rim of my bowl and turned to her. Have I ever mentioned Mary Ann Cotton to you? Renata's gaze came up to meet mine. I don't believe so. Who's that? England's deadliest poisoner. Victorian era, 1870s. 21 people dead, mostly family killed slowly with arsenic across months or years. I kept my eyes anchored to her face as I said it. How awful, she said, hand moving toward her wine glass. The early signs were easy to miss, I continued. Stomach trouble, exhaustion, a creeping fog in the head. Doctors wrote it off as natural decline, the body wearing down. I lifted a forkful of food, chewed without hurry. She drew life insurance on nearly every one of them, spouses, children, her own mother. Nolan's utensil hit his plate with a sharp clank. Theo's chin came up. Renata took a sip of wine. It unraveled when a physician got suspicious after a 3rd child in her household died, I said. He pushed for a post-mortem examination. The arsenic concentrations they found were lethal several times over. I spread butter across a slice of bread, eyes never leaving her. 7 exhumed bodies later, all poisoned. She was hanged in 1873. Fascinating, Renata said, voice smooth as glass. What people turn out to be capable of. She set her glass down. More bread, Gerald. She offered me bread. I had just walked her through the career of a woman who killed 21 people with poison, described the symptoms. The same ones I'd been suffering through for 8 weeks, the insurance payouts, the bodies dug from the ground, the noose. And Renata Grover's response was to offer me more bread. Nothing crossed her face. No tensing around the eyes, no catch in the breath, no involuntary shift of expression. The interest she projected was the same mild curiosity she might show toward a news story about someone she'd never heard of. Nolan pushed back from the table. I'm sorry, I need to step away. Stomach's off. Heavy tread on the stairs. Theo's eyes came to mine for half a second, a whole conversation in a glance. Renata poured more wine. He gets these spells, she told Theo, voice full of gentle worry. Then she looked at me. Work has been wearing on him lately, you understand? I do, I said. We ate what remained of the meal without much conversation. Renata collected the dishes afterward, something quiet on her lips, not quite a song, just sound. Theo slipped off to his room. I stayed at the candlelit table and watched my daughter-in-law rinse plates at the sink as though the story I'd just told had been about a stranger in another century. That was the moment I stopped having any doubt. Not a suspicion, not a working theory, certainty. She'd carried out this same thing before in Cincinnati against her Uncle Virgil, and she'd escaped consequences because she never cracked. She was too composed, too practiced, too fundamentally unmoved by her own actions. 21 poisoning victims, the arsenic match to my own symptoms, and she'd offered me bread. I held her gaze across that flickering candlelight and found no trace of guilt, no fear behind the surface, nothing resembling remorse. Just the steady, patient intelligence of someone who had done this before and fully intended to do it again. She folded the dish towel and hung it on the oven rail. Having you here is a good thing, Gerald, she said. A house needs family in it. I'm grateful you'd have me. I answered, the performance still running. She smiled. Coffee first thing tomorrow. I'll get a pot going before 7 o'clock. That sounds perfect, I told her. I watched her go upstairs, and I sat with the thought of that coffee, the fresh pot she'd promised for 7 a.m., the one I had absolutely no intention of drinking. At 11 p.m. on the dot, I rapped twice on my grandson's door. The rest of the house was dark. Nolan and Renata asleep 30 feet down the hall, their plans for me presumably intact. Theo answered at once, wide awake, dressed in dark clothing, the small backpack already waiting on the mattress with all 3 cameras inside. No words were exchanged. We both understood what came next. Shoes off. I moved in socks. Theo went barefoot. Out into the hallway. The house held its breath around us. Down the hall, Nolan's breathing had settled into a soft, rhythmic snore. And from the other side of the bed, nothing. Renata slept in absolute silence the way a predator rests. Kitchen first. Theo drew out the first camera compact. As a smoke detector, matte black, casing a lens you'd miss if you weren't looking. He stepped up onto a chair, reached past the top of the refrigerator, and wedged the unit into the upper corner, clean sightline, down the full length of the counter, and straight onto the coffee maker. I kept the chair stable with both hands and held my breath against the dark hallway beyond. Not a sound. On to camera, 2 upper corner of the hallway where wall surface meets ceiling. Theo used my shoulders as a platform. Precarious, but the only way to get the angle aimed squarely at the bedroom corridor and the office door. Nothing moved in the master bedroom. Camera 3, the office itself. We slid through the gap, eased the door nearly shut. Theo slotted the unit behind a row of binders on the shelf, the lens threading through just enough to hold the desk in frame, the same desk where I'd first laid eyes on those insurance documents. 12 minutes start to finish. Not a single sound made. Back in the guest room, door latched, I set the laptop on the bed and raised the lid. 3 feeds loaded. 3 live windows, kitchen, hallway. Office each with a small green light burning in the corner to confirm the recording was running. Theo settled in beside me, our shoulders touching, both of us, fixed on 3 still empty rooms glowing on the screen. Now we wait, I breathed. A 17-year-old boy and his grandfather sitting in the dark watching for a woman to come poison a coffee pot. The clock moved like it was wading through something thick. 11:15, 11:22, 11:30. Theo's breathing beside me was even and controlled. My pulse was not. We'll keep eyes on the live feeds tonight, even with the motion sensors running, I murmured. Kitchen, hallway, office, whatever they do, we'll see it. What if nothing happens tonight? Grandpa, then we sit here again tomorrow, but I don't expect to be waiting long. 11:41. 11:45. I kept returning to the thought of the coffee maker on the kitchen counter, the Maxwell House coffee container beside it. The routine Renata had cheerfully outlined, pot, ready 7 a.m. sharp. 11:47 p.m. The kitchen feed flared bright. Motion. Renata stepped into frame, a thin robe hair pulled back the walk of someone who knew exactly what she was doing and saw no reason to hurry. Theo, I whispered. Get your phone on the screen right now. Secondary recording. Back everything up. He had it out in a second, aimed at the laptop. On screen, Renata swept a look around the kitchen, making certain she was alone. Then she went to the cabinet over the sink, reached up without hesitation, and came down with a small glass vial. Clear liquid, no label. She worked off the cap, lifted the lid of the Maxwell House coffee container on the counter, and tipped a measured pour from the vial down into the grounds. No trembling, no spilling, controlled and exact. She set the vial aside, plucked a spoon from the rack and stirred. I counted under my breath. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 15. Exactly 15 rotations of that spoon, not one more, not one fewer, methodical, practiced. Then she sealed the Maxwell House coffee container, twisted the cap back onto the vial, dried her hands on the dish towel hanging from the oven. Handle returned the vial to its spot in the cabinet above the sink. Closed the door, swept a look around the kitchen, and smiled. A small smile, barely perceptible, but unmistakably there. 90 seconds from the moment she'd walked in to the moment she walked out. I hit manual save, immediately pushed the file to the cloud, copied it to my email, to Rupert's email, to a backup drive. Theo sat rigid beside me, breath barely audible. On screen, Renata left the kitchen with the unhurried ease of someone who'd just gone down for a glass of water. Calm, loose-limbed, no rush at all. I played the footage again, zoomed in tight on her hands, steady as a surgeon's, no tremor anywhere in the motion. The pour was measured, the stirs were exact. 15, not 14, not 16. 15. She had done this before, not just to me, not just in the past 8 weeks. What I was watching was muscle memory. Grandpa. Theo's voice came out barely above nothing, shaking. She's smiling. While she does it, she's actually smiling. I see it. How can a person even... He didn't finish. The sentence just stopped. I ran the footage a third time, froze it on the frame where both her hands held the vial, confident, unhurried, assured. Those weren't the hands of a first attempt. Uncle Virgil in Cincinnati, 71 years old, dead of an apparent myocardial infarction in September 2012. Renata had been a regular presence, always showing up with food. He'd known these same hands, seen the same small smile, the same unhurried precision. He simply hadn't had cameras. 90 seconds, I said almost to myself. Steady hands, a slight upturn at the corner of her mouth, 15 measured stirs. I looked at my grandson. He hadn't moved still, fixed on the laptop screen on the frozen image of his mother with a vial of poison. That hand has done this before, I said. This is not the first time. Theo said nothing, just kept staring. I saved 3 additional copies, pushed them to separate email accounts and different cloud services, making absolutely certain this evidence had nowhere to disappear to, because tomorrow morning, Renata would offer me coffee. She'd ladle it into a mug, set it in front of me with that composed, pleasant face, the exact same face she'd worn while stirring poison into the grounds, and I would have to meet her eyes and say, "No thank you, I'm not thirsty this morning." Without betraying for a single second that I'd watched every moment of her 90-second routine, that it was now preserved in 6 separate locations, that her practiced professional unhurried method was now a piece of evidence that would put her behind bars for life. I shut the laptop. "Get some sleep," I told Theo. "Tomorrow we behave as though nothing happened." How? The same way I sat at that dinner table while she set food in front of me. The same way you've gone on living under this roof knowing what they were doing. We pretend. He nodded. Rose crossed to the door and paused with his hand on it. "Grandpa, I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't apologize for that. Not ever. You helped keep me alive. That's what matters." He went. I sat alone in the darkened guest room, the laptop closed, turning over the image of those steady hands, that faint smile. 90 seconds. And I understood Renata Grover wasn't only a murderer, she was a skilled one. I had video of Renata poisoning the coffee. Within 20 minutes, I'd learned that the conspiracy reached further than family. 8 minutes after watching Renata dose the coffee, the office camera lit up, and I saw my son sink into his desk chair and write something that made his whole body shake. 11:55 p.m. Nolan stepped into the office. He left the overhead off only the desk lamp, its warm circle falling across his face. He dropped into the chair with the weight of someone who'd been carrying too much for too long, pulled open the drawer, and lifted out a spiral-bound notebook with a green cover, the same one from the storage unit, the one filled with Renata's handwriting, cataloging my murder, week by week. Nolan opened it to a blank page, picked up a pen. His hand was trembling. He wrote slowly. I couldn't make out the words from the camera angle, but I watched the motion of his hand, deliberate, halting, like every word cost something. Then he set the pen down and buried his face in both hands. His shoulders began to move. My son was crying, silently alone in that lit circle of lamplight, crying over whatever he'd just committed to that page. Theo sat rigid next to me, watching his father come apart on the screen. The door swung open. Renata filled the frame, backlit from the hallway behind her. "Done," flat voice, no warmth in it. Nolan didn't lift his head. "Done?" "Good." She leaned against the doorframe, arms loose at her sides. "Garrett called tonight. Profile B will be ready before the 15th. Nolan's head came up sharply. The color left his face. "What?" he said. "The profile, Dr. Fenwick's backup plan, ready to file by December 15th if it comes to that." "I didn't, you said we were only doing the..." Nolan stopped, looked at her. "What profile?" Renata's expression didn't shift. "The dementia diagnosis, the nursing home option. I told you about this." "No, you didn't. I must have. It doesn't matter. It's there if Plan A doesn't land clean." Nolan got to his feet. "Renata, what are you talking about? What nursing home? Sit down. Answer me. Sit down." Her voice dropped a register, all warmth gone from it. "You don't need to concern yourself with contingencies. That's handled. Your job was to write the final entry in the journal. Is it done?" Nolan looked at the notebook, then at her. Back at the notebook. "Yes." he said, voice hollow. Then that's all for tonight. Go to bed. She turned and was gone. Nolan stood in place for another full minute, staring at nothing before he followed her out. The office went dark. I had just watched my son discover in real time that his wife was lying to him, even while they were conspiring together to end my life. "Grandpa," Theo whispered, "Dad doesn't know about Plan B. The nursing home, he had no idea. No, he didn't. She's been managing him. Does that make him less guilty?" I thought about Nolan's shaking hand moving across that page, the 3 times he'd said no. The tears. "I don't know," I said, and that was the honest answer. I genuinely didn't know. We sat with that for several minutes. Then, at 12:10 a.m., the kitchen feed activated again. Renata. She came in without turning on a light, guided only by the glow of her phone screen. She raised it to her ear. I pushed the laptop volume as high as it would go. The camera mic was sensitive, but she was speaking barely above a whisper. "Finishing this week," she said. "I need the nursing home paperwork prepared before the 15th. Everything ready to file." A pause listening. "It doesn't matter what he thinks. The profile has to be convincing enough for the insurance company. They need to believe the old man can't manage his own affairs." Another pause. "Good. And the certification? Listening again?" "Perfect. Insurance companies won't challenge a dementia finding from a licensed psychiatrist, not when it's backed by 8 weeks of documented symptoms." A small smile crossed her face in the dark. "No, he doesn't know the full scope. Better that way. He's too emotional, gets cold feet." Pause. "December 15th stands. If Plan A isn't complete by then, we pivot immediately. I want the guardianship petition ready to file that morning." A longer pause. "The fee we discussed is acceptable. Half now, half when the policy pays out. Wire transfer, same account as before." A few more seconds of listening. "Understood. I'll see you Friday for the final review." She ended the call, stood motionless in the darkened kitchen for a moment, then went back upstairs. I paused the recording and played it again from the start. "There's someone inside the system helping them," I said. Theo was still fixed on the screen. "Who?" "Someone holding a medical license. Someone qualified to sign off on psychiatric evaluations. Someone who'd worked with her before, same account as before she'd said. A prior arrangement." I opened my notebook, the spiral-bound one, with the green cover where I'd been recording everything, and wrote 12:10 a.m. phone call. Renata. Third conspirator confirmed. Medical professional producing fraudulent psychiatric profile and nursing home paperwork. Paid by wire transfer. Same account as before, prior relationship. Meeting, Friday final review. I turned to Theo. "This goes beyond your mother and father. There's a third party. Someone with professional standing who's preparing documents to strip me of my legal identity. Someone who could take the stand if it came to that. Someone an insurance company would accept without question. Can we trace the call? Rupert might manage it, or Conrad. But we move carefully. If this person senses we're coming before we have something solid on them, they'll wipe everything and vanish." I saved the second kitchen video, pushed it to cloud storage, distributed copies across 3 email accounts. 2 files now: Renata dosing the coffee, Renata coordinating fraudulent medical paperwork with an accomplice. But it still wasn't enough. Not quite, because they weren't working alone. Somewhere, there was a person with a medical license, the authority to sign psychiatric evaluations that insurance carriers accept at face value, preparing documents designed to erase me from my own existence. That midnight call, "doesn't matter what he thinks the profile must be convincing," told me everything I needed to know about the shape of what we were up against. The third person in this had real professional power, and we had to identify them before we made a move, because stopping Renata alone would never be enough. There'd always be a next target, another old person to quietly erase another family torn apart. I shut the laptop. "Get some rest," I told Theo. "First thing tomorrow, we track down who was on that call. Rupert has people he can call. Conrad has the tools. And Renata mentioned she's sitting down with them Friday for a final sign-off. We had under 24 hours to put names to those voices." Theo pushed back his chair, crossed to the door, then stopped and looked at me. "Grandpa, how many others has she done this to?" Uncle Virgil in Cincinnati came to mind. That same account, the same cool, business-like tone in her voice. "I can't say for certain," I told him, "but I intend to make sure nobody comes after me." Friday morning, Renata's accomplice had a name. By Friday night, I understood there was still one more night to get through before any of it could end. At 7 Friday morning, I forwarded Conrad the clipped audio from Renata's late-night call. 3 hours and a name came back. Dr. Aldrich Fenwick, Conrad told me. Private practice, East Broad Street. The number ran straight to his office. I was at the breakfast table in Nolan's kitchen, watching Renata lay out pancakes like a woman with nothing to hide. I kept my voice even. You're certain about this? Voice analysis confirmed it. Network logs, too. Conrad had already set up a meeting, worried son, aging father, mental decline. The doctor didn't ask a single question. Then, 2 hours on, Conrad phoned again. He said the man had stepped right into it. 40 minutes recorded. One-party consent, Wisconsin law. Fenwick had laid the whole scheme out himself. Assessments assembled from family statements and paperwork. No direct patient contact required. Insurance companies take these profiles without blinking, he said. A beat of quiet. He gave it all away, without once realizing he was doing it. By 2 p.m., Piece 4 was in hand. Dr. Aldrich Fenwick, in his own recorded words detailing exactly how he'd certified a mental health evaluation on a man he'd never set eyes on. Then Adrian's call came through. "Grandpa." Something in her voice was close to breaking. An envelope had been left outside her door. White no return address, nothing written on it. Her breath snagged. Inside was a photograph of Jimena, shot from behind, taken the day before. School uniform, backpack, the street behind her. Whoever took it made sure she never noticed. The clatter of the kitchen below me felt like it belonged to another world. "Find somewhere for her to stay tonight," I said. "Don't tell her why. Don't let her see you're frightened. Get her to safety, then let me know." "It's not myself I'm worried about," Adrian murmured. "It's her. I know that. We finish this today." At 7 p.m., Rupert and I took seats across from Detective Cecilia Beauford in a conference room at Columbus Division of Police Headquarters. 2 decades working homicide. She went through every item, with her face giving away nothing. The surveillance footage, the audio recordings, the photos from the storage unit, the journal Conrad's taped confession, the picture of Jimena. When she reached the end, she set her pen on the table. "This holds up. Conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud, falsified medical records threatening a minor." She turned to Rupert. "How long did it take to put all this together?" 12 days, I said. Something close to surprise crossed her face. "I'm going to need 48 hours. District attorney's sign-off warrants, coordinated takedowns, your son, his wife, and Dr. Fenwick all at once." Saturday morning, 8:25. Something lurched in my chest. One more night, she said. "Go home to that house. Keep acting like nothing's wrong. Leave whatever they put in front of you untouched." She leaned toward me across the table. "Can you hold it together until then?" I pictured Renata's calm, unhurried hands. Nolan weeping by himself in the dark. A girl of 14 on her way home, unaware she was being photographed. "Yes," I said. Rupert pulled up to the curb and let me out. I didn't move right away. "It's almost done," he said. I crossed to the front door. Renata was at the stove. She looked up when I walked in, a smile already on her face. "Good you're back. Give me 20 minutes for dinner." "Thank you, dear." I climbed the stairs, stretched out on the guest bed, lay in the dark, looking at nothing above me. One more night, 12 hours between now and the end. I shut my eyes and mapped out every step I'd take at 5:30 a.m., before the house stirred, to make certain no one swallowed poison while the clock ran down to justice. I made it through. Saturday, 5:30 a.m. The kitchen still wrapped in that blue half-dark before daylight, and I moved. I'm standing here alone, holding the Maxwell House coffee container that has been working its way through me for 38 days. My hands aren't trembling. They ought to be. 68 years old. 8 weeks of slow poisoning in my body. What I'm doing right now will put my own son behind bars, and still my hands don't shake. Not a sound in the house. Nolan and Renata asleep one floor up. Through the kitchen window, only blackness and the barest suggestion of a gray-blue dawn creeping in at the edge. I lift the lid off the Maxwell House container with care. The odor reaches me immediately. Coffee grounds underneath it, something wrong on top. Faint. Chemical. That's what Renata mixed in Thursday night while I sat watching the camera feed. From my jacket, I draw out a gallon Ziploc bag, already marked evidence Maxwell House coffee container, poisoned with antifreeze. November 21st, 2022, 5:30 a.m. The contaminated grounds go in every last trace, and I press the seal shut. The bag gets buried at the bottom of my overnight duffel, folded inside a towel. Out of that same duffel, I take a brand new Maxwell House container, still sealed. Picked it up yesterday. The clean grounds go into the old canister, lid back on. To anyone glancing over, it's the same red container that's lived on that counter for over a month. The poison, though, is gone. Locked in a bag, logged as evidence. Coffee grounds that once meant morning routine, after 38 years of the same quiet ritual, now they carry that thin chemical trace of antifreeze through the Maxwell house. I zip the bag shut, and that odor disappears with it. I open my notebook, every day accounted for, every symptom, every doubt, every thread I pulled. One final read-through. Day 1, the dizziness. Day 8, Adrian's warning. Day 15, the storage unit. Day 23, Cincinnati, Uncle Virgil. Day 32, the camera catching Renata lacing the coffee. Day 38, today, the last entry. I close it, slide it into the duffel. Then I reach into my jacket for the letter I drafted before I turned in last night. 38 years, teaching history at Lincoln High School, Columbus. History has one lesson. It never stops repeating people who think they're above consequences, eventually learn otherwise, usually while wearing handcuffs. Every camera recorded it. The coffee is bagged and sealed. The evidence is ready. Detective Cecilia Beauford, Columbus Division of Police Homicide, walks through the door at 8:25 a.m. I hope it was worth it. Gerald Grover. I fold the letter back along its creases, nestle it inside the Maxwell House container with the clean coffee, and replace the lid. Saturday morning, Renata will come down and reach for this the way she always does. And instead of poison, she'll pull out my letter. I check my watch. 5:47 a.m., 2 hours and 38 minutes. I head upstairs. Finish packing, get in the shower, dress, and walk back down at 6:15. I take a chair in the living room and open a book. I read nothing. 6:30 a.m., movement overhead, water running, Nolan's alarm. 6:42 a.m., softer steps now. Renata. 6:51 a.m. She appears at the bottom of the stairs in her robe hair already neat. She spots me. Gerald, you're up early. Couldn't sleep. Old man problems? A smile? I'll get the coffee going. Breakfast in 20 minutes. That would be lovely. She moves into the kitchen. I stay where I am, book in my lap, eyes pointed at the page, taking in nothing. Cabinet door swings open. The container is lifted from the shelf. Then quiet. Total quiet. The crinkle of paper being unfolded. Quiet again. 10 seconds, 15, 20. I get to my feet. Step to the kitchen doorway. Renata is at the counter back straight. My letter open in both hands. The Maxwell House container sits beside her, lid off. The color has drained entirely from her face. She looks over at me. What is this barely audible? Exactly what it says. You. She stops herself, drops her eyes too. The letter brings them back up. You know, I've known since November 11th. Adriana came to me first. I wrote everything down. Every camera was running. The coffee you doctored Thursday night is sitting in an evidence bag. Dr. Aldrich Fenwick's recorded confession is already in the hands of Columbus Division of Police. Your calls at midnight are on tape. I spent 38 years teaching the fall of Rome. It always ended the same way. The fatal mistake was always believing that power meant immunity. I'm looking at that exact moment right now in this kitchen on a November Saturday morning. Renata's grip on the letter loosens. Her hands are shaking. In 38 days, I haven't once seen that. And now I watch the whole careful structure she built around herself come apart. You can't, she begins, cuts off. Nolan didn't. This was my doing. He didn't want any of this. I know. He turned you down 3 separate times before you wore him down. I've got that on tape as well. Theo's recordings. Something shifts in her expression. The realization landing. Theo, your son, has had a recorder running for 3 weeks. Wisconsin one-party consent. Every word is usable in court. Her fingers release the letter. They won't stop trembling. That face she has carried through all of this, devoted daughter-in-law, steadfast wife, warm hostess, it's fracturing now, piece by piece, dropping away. What's underneath is not composure. It's plain, unvarnished fear. Cincinnati, I say, keeping my voice quiet. Uncle Virgil Cullen, 2012. That case is being reopened. Detective Beauford reached out to Cincinnati PD. The preserved tissue samples are going back to the lab. Renata's legs give. She grabs the edge of the counter to stay upright. No, she whispers. No, that was ruled, they closed it. Insufficient evidence because you had him cremated before anyone grew suspicious, but tissue samples were kept, and antifreeze poisoning leaves traces. She lifts her eyes from the letter, face emptied of color mouth starting to open. I glance at my watch. 8:04 a.m. Detective Beaufort said they'd be here at 8:25. I step past Renata to the coffee maker, pour myself a cup from the clean batch I prepared at 5:30 this morning, the coffee that isn't going to kill me. Pull out a chair at the kitchen table and sit down to wait. 21 minutes until the police walk in. 21 minutes until my son goes to prison. 21 minutes until there's justice for Uncle Virgil, for me, for every person Renata Grover would have taken down if I hadn't moved first. I take a slow sip and I wait. Those 21 minutes stretch like hours. Then I heard Renata run. Right after I settle with my coffee, her footsteps pound up the staircase and her voice punches through Nolan's bedroom door. He knows everything. We have to leave right now. I stay at the kitchen table, sipping, listening. Muffled voices above me. Nolan's voice thick with sleep and confusion. Renata's sharper, faster, starting to unravel. Then more footsteps, several of them moving into the hallway. We don't have time for this. Renata's voice carries all the way down the stairs. Grab a bag. We're gone in 5 minutes. Renata, what are you? He knows. Your father knows all of it. The cameras, the coffee. He has evidence. We need to be out before the police arrive. Mom, Theo's voice, quiet from his bedroom doorway. Silence. I rise slowly, cross to the foot of the stairs, look up. Theo stands in the hallway, 17 years old, eyes red and swollen from a night of weeping. Nolan sees his son, sees those tears, sees the way Theo is looking at him, not with anger, with something harder to absorb, disappointment. Nolan stops moving entirely. He stands there in the hallway with one hand resting on the banister, unable to look away from the boy. Theo, he says, voice barely there. I know, Dad. I heard everything. I've been recording you for 3 weeks. Renata's face drains. What Wisconsin one-party consent? Theo's voice is level now. I live in this household. Every word on that recorder is legal evidence. Nolan sits down right there on the stairs, just folds. Drops his face into both hands. Nolan, get up. Renata grabs his arm. We can still, Delia, stop. His voice comes out flat. Dead. I'm not running anymore. Renata goes rigid. What did you call me, Delia? That's your real name, isn't it? Before Cincinnati. Before you changed it and married me. Delia Cullen. I spent 6 years teaching adolescent psychology before I moved to history. Fight or flight calcifies somewhere between ages 7 and 9. I'm watching that exact moment, locked inside a 45-year-old man who never got past it. Renata lets go of his arm and backs away. You knew. I've known for 5 years since Burl Maddox ran a background check before he extended me the first loan. He found the Cincinnati file, showed it to me, told me he'd keep it quiet as long as I stayed current on payments. And you said nothing this whole time. I loved you. Nolan looks up at her face, wet. I kept thinking that if I was good enough, if I sorted out the money, if I gave you everything you needed, maybe you'd stop being whoever you were back in Cincinnati. Maybe you'd just be my wife. Renata holds his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she bolts down the stairs, blows past me, and goes straight for the back door. She reaches the kitchen, yanks it open. 2 Columbus Division of Police officers are on the back porch, weapons drawn. Ma'am, step back inside the house. She slams the door wheels around, eyes snapping to the front. It swings open. Detective Cecilia Beaufort walks in. Mid-40s, sharp eyes that have absorbed too many family crimes. 3 more officers at her back. And Rupert, my friend, my retired detective friend, who helped me assemble every piece of this case. Nolan Grover, Renata. Grover Beaufort, says voice measured and official. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder. 2 officers move toward Nolan, still seated on the stairs. He doesn't fight them, just shifts his hands behind his back and lets them work. Renata is a different story. She screams, thrashes, kicks. It takes 2 officers to get her under control. You coward, she screams at Nolan. You weak, pathetic coward. I'm not going down for this. Nolan keeps his eyes on the floor. Nothing comes out of him. Buford comes over to me. Mr. Grover, Are you all right? I'm fine. We'll need a full statement from you downtown, and we'll need the physical evidence, the coffee grounds, the notebook, everything. It's in my duffel in the guest room upstairs. An officer heads up to retrieve it. Rupert walks over and sets a hand on my shoulder. You did good, he says quietly. This is finished. I watch the officers work through the evidence. The Ziploc bag of contaminated coffee, the SD cards from the cameras, my notebook, the photographs, the audio files from Theo's phone, the evidence bags stack across the dining table like 38 days of slow death, made solid each sealed bag a morning. I swallowed something designed to kill me, and didn't. Theo comes downstairs, walks past his mother being cuffed, and stops in front of his father. Nolan looks up at him, opens his mouth, closes it again. No words come. Theo gives one nod, then crosses the room to stand beside me. Grandpa, he says quietly, can I stay with you? Yes, I say. Of course. They take Renata out first, still screaming, still fighting, throwing threats at the officers, at me, at Nolan. Then they bring Nolan to the front door. He stops, turns back, not toward Renata, already in the patrol car, not toward Theo at my side. He looks straight at me, face wet with tears, hands cuffed behind his back. And in his eyes, I find something I haven't encountered there in decades. Fear. The raw, unguarded kind. I see the 7-year-old boy who stood watching his mother get arrested in 1985, who decided that day that going invisible was safer than standing up to anything, who spent his entire life running from whatever was bearing down on him until he ran head-on into the worst decision he would ever make. His mouth opens, closes, opens once more. Dad, he whispers. I'm sorry. I give him nothing back, just one nod. Acknowledgement, not forgiveness. They walk him to the patrol car. As he reaches it, he turns one final time, not toward Renata, hurling threats at the officers, not toward Theo on the porch. He looks straight at me, and I see it again, that same terrified 7-year-old who watched his mother taken away in 1985, who learned right then that vanishing was safer than facing anything. He never learned otherwise. The patrol cars roll away. I stand in the driveway, Theo beside me, Rupert on my other side, watching the red and blue lights shrink and disappear down the street. 45 years of family history gone in 21 minutes. The patrol cars left at 8:41 a.m., red and blue lights fading down Milo Avenue like dying embers. Rupert stood to my left, hands buried in his coat pockets. Theo stood to my right, silent, watching his parents vanish. I wanted to find something to say. Something a grandfather is supposed to offer about justice, about healing, about what comes next. But every phrase felt hollow before it reached my lips. Then Renata's voice cut across the morning. Gerald. I turned. Detective Beaufort had paused at the second patrol car, one hand on Renata's shoulder, as she twisted in the back seat, face pressed to the glass. The window swallowed most of it, but I could read her lips clearly. You don't know everything. Beaufort pulled the door open 6 inches. Ma'am, I strongly advise. Let her speak, I said. Renata pushed halfway out, wrists pinned behind her hair, pulled loose from the struggle, her eyes driving into mine with an intensity that tightened something in my chest. You think this is over? You think you figured it all out? I think, I said slowly, that attempted murder and insurance fraud will keep you occupied for the next 20 to 30 years. Her laugh came out sharp, bitter. Cincinnati, Gerald. Ask him about Cincinnati. Nolan's head snapped up in the first patrol car, visible through the rear window. Even from 20 feet, I could see the color leave his face. 12 years ago, I said, holding her gaze. November 2010. Delia Harwick. I already know. The color drained from Renata's face in 2 seconds. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. How your husband called you Delia yesterday at 3:17 p.m. I took out my phone and showed her the timestamp on Theo's recording. I had a P. I run the name through Cincinnati databases. Delia Marie Harwick wanted for embezzlement and identity theft. $340,000 from Lakeside Community Bank. You believe Nolan was your insurance policy. Turns out he was keeping your confession on tape as leverage. Pattern interrupt. The human brain processes shock in stages. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Renata's face moved through all 5 in 11 seconds. A masterclass in psychological collapse. She sagged against the car door. Buford caught her by the elbow and steered her back into the seat. The door clicked shut. Through the glass, I watched her lips form a single word. How? I didn't answer. The patrol car pulled away. Grandpa. Theo's voice was small, younger than 17 had any right to sound. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around my chest in a hug that held apology and gratitude and grief all pressed into one moment. He didn't say another word. Neither did I. Some things silence carries better than words ever could. We stood like that for maybe 40 seconds. When he pulled back, his eyes were red-rimmed but dry. What happens now? Now, Rupert said, your grandfather files a victim's impact statement, cooperates with the DA, and lets the system do its work. And me, I squeezed his shoulder. You did the right thing. That recording saved my life. Whatever comes next, you're not going through it alone. A white Corolla pulled up to the curb. Conrad Pruitt, my I'm 52 years old, former student from my 1986 American history class. He stepped out, came over with that unhurried way he moves, and gave me a single nod. No words, just the quiet acknowledgement of two men who understood that some victories taste like ash. Got the Cincinnati file sent over to Detective Beaufort, Conrad said. Warrants are already out for Delia Harwick. They'll fold it into her charges here. She'll turn on Nolan, Rupert said. Classic prisoner's dilemma. Whoever talks first gets the better arrangement. Conrad tilted his head. My money's on Nolan. He's got the recordings and he's the weaker one. Renata will lawyer up and say nothing. Twist. I thought about Nolan's terrified face in the back of that patrol car. Rupert and Conrad saw a soft man ready to sell out his wife. I saw something else. A 7-year-old boy watching his mother walk away all over again. Except this time, she wasn't coming back. 45 years on, he was still that child, still waiting for someone to step in and save him. Let them work it out between them, I said. I'm finished being their target. Conrad nodded, once more shook my hand, and left. The street went quiet. No sirens, no shouting. Just November wind pushing dead leaves across the driveway. Rupert stepped away to make calls to his former Columbus Division of Police colleagues. Theo went inside to text Adrian. I stood alone on the porch looking at the spot where Renata's coffee cup had rested 3 hours before and reached for my phone. Adriani picked up on the second ring. Mr. Grover, it's over. I said they were both in custody. Her exhale came out shaky with relief. Theo texted me. Is he doing all right? He will be. What about Jimena Pattern Interrupt? Jimena Falcone, Nolan's girlfriend, 19 years old, studying early childhood education at Ohio State University. She'd unknowingly been with a man who was conspiring to murder his own father. The guilt would trail her, even though she carried no fault in any of it. She's at my apartment, Adrian said. She knows they were arrested, but not why. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth. She deserves it. But make sure she understands this is not on her. What if she doesn't believe me? Then she's smart. It'll take time. I paused. Thank you, Adrian. For looking after Theo, for sending that photo of the envelope. You didn't have to put yourself in the middle of this. He's my best friend, she said simply. Of course I did. We hung up. I slid the phone into my pocket and looked at the house. Same cream siding, same red door, same porch where I'd sat every morning for 6 years. Everything looked the same. Everything felt changed. Twist. The poison was never the real danger. The real poison was understanding that the woman who'd called me dad for 17 years had looked at me and seen nothing but a figure on a policy. That the son I'd raised in my home had weighed my death like a line item in a ledger. Antifreeze could kill me in hours. That truth was going to take years. Theo opened the front door. Grandpa, you coming in? Yeah, I said. I'm coming. I walked inside, pulled the door shut behind me, and wondered how long before this house felt like home again. But as I passed the kitchen table, where Renata's poisoned coffee had once sat in plain sight, one question wouldn't leave me if Nolan testifies against her to protect himself. And she retaliates by laying out everything he's done. Who really wins when a family tears itself apart from within? 2 weeks after the arrests, Detective Beaufort walked into my hospital room, where I was still recovering from antifreeze poisoning, and said, Cincinnati just reopened a 12-year-old murder case. I set down the cup of apple juice, the only thing that didn't taste like metal anymore, and looked at her. Renata's uncle Virgil Cullen died November 2010, ruled natural causes at the time. Beaufort pulled a chair to my bedside and laid a manila folder on the tray table. That comment you made during the arrest Cincinnati 12 years ago, I followed it up. Cincinnati PD pulled the sealed file. Virgil's sister Lorraine never accepted the natural causes ruling. She pushed for an autopsy, had tissue samples preserved. Rupert appeared in the doorway with 2 coffees. He'd been by every day since they moved me out of the ICU. They ran new tests yesterday. Beaufort opened the folder and slid a toxicology report in front of me. Same antifreeze-based poison composition. Identical ratios, identical degradation markers. Either it's the most remarkable coincidence in forensic history, or Renata rehearsed on her uncle before she came after me. The words on the page blurred at the edges. My vision was still coming back, but I could read the highlighted line. Ethylene glycol metabolites consistent with chronic low-dose exposure over 6 to 8 weeks. He left her nothing in the will, I said quietly. She mentioned it years ago. Her uncle had promised to help with Theo's college fund, then changed his mind at the last moment. I thought she was just venting. Rupert settled into the second chair and handed me one of the coffees, even though I wasn't cleared for caffeine yet. The smell alone, rich and dark, nothing like those poison grounds, pulled me back into the present. Lorene Cullen has been waiting 12 years for this call. Beaufort made it this morning. What's the charge? First-degree murder, Illinois. Beaufort tapped the folder. Mandatory life without parole if convicted. Columbus's case is attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, 20 to 30 years. Cincinnati's case puts her away permanently. I eased back against the pillow, feeling the IV pull in my left arm. The irony settled over me like something heavy. Renata had tried to kill me for insurance money, and in doing so, she set off the investigation that will convict her for the murder she believed she'd buried for good. Twist. I didn't drop Cincinnati's name during the arrest by accident. I knew that if Beaufort heard that city tied to Renata's past, she would dig. Conrad had turned up the sealed file 3 days before the arrests. Virgil Cullen, suspicious death sister's formal complaint, ignored. I planted that name deliberately betting that a thorough detective wouldn't let it go. I was right. When does Cincinnati file grand jury convenes? January 8th. Beaufort closed the folder. They're coordinating with the Columbus DA. Renata will face both trials hours first, then extradition to Ohio. Rupert sipped his coffee eyes on the window. Lorene wants to testify. She's 71, now the same age Virgil was when he died. She told Beaufort she's been holding his ashes for 12 years, waiting to give him a proper burial once someone was finally held to account. The room went quiet. Outside December, snow drifted past the 4th-floor window, soft and unhurried. I thought about Lorene Cullen, a woman I'd never met carrying loss and ashes for over a decade, and I understood how close I'd come to leaving Theo to carry mine. Pattern interrupt. In 2018, I taught a unit on criminal justice reform, wrongful convictions, cold cases cracked open by DNA, evidence the vital role of preserved samples in families who refused to stop pushing. I assigned readings about victims' relatives who held on for years until someone finally listened. I never imagined I'd become the cold case that helped crack open another one, or that my own attempted murder would hand a different family the justice they had been denied for more than a decade. What about Nolan? I asked. Beaufort and Rupert exchanged a look. The ADA wants him on the stand. She's offering a deal. Mid-December, I was discharged from the hospital carrying a prescription for kidney support medication and instructions to avoid anything containing ethylene glycol for the rest of my life. The irony of that warning was not lost on me. Franklin County Courthouse Courtroom, 7B. I sat in the gallery beside Theo, who had missed 2 weeks of school and looked older than 17 had any right to look. Rupert sat to my right. Assistant District Attorney Georgette Nearing called Nolan Grover to the stand. Nearing was 52, 28 years, prosecuting family violence cases in Columbus with a 91% conviction rate and a reputation for offering deals only when the testimony was worth more than the sentence. Nolan walked to the stand in county jail, orange wrists, shackled eyes cast down. He didn't look at me, didn't look at Theo. Nearing stood at the prosecution table, hands folded. Mr. Grover, you've signed a cooperation agreement with this office. Please explain the terms to the court. 15 years, Nolan said, his voice raw. If I testify truthfully against my wife, otherwise, life. Anne, whose idea was the conspiracy to poison Gerald Grover. My wife proposed it. I objected 3 times. I should have called my dad. The courtroom is silent, except for the court reporter's fingers moving across the stenotype. Theo's hand finds mine and squeezes once. Why didn't you call him Mr. Grover? Nolan finally looks up, his eyes locating me across the gallery. Because I've been running from my father my whole life. Pattern interrupt. Watching your son testify against his wife to escape dying in prison is like grading an essay where every sentence is technically accurate, but the thesis arrives 45 years too late. The facts are right, he objected. He knew it was wrong. He went along with it anyway. But the conclusion that matters, the one that says I chose differently, never shows up on the page. After the testimony, Rupert hands me a manila envelope outside the courtroom. Columbus Division of Police found this in the storage unit. Thought you should have it. Inside was a handwritten letter, Nolan's familiar slanted cursive, dated October 2022. Dad, I need to tell you something about Renata. She's been, the sentence stops there. Unfinished, never mailed, twist. He almost warned me. 1 month before that first poison coffee, Nolan sat down and began writing the truth. Then he stopped, folded. The letter tucked it away in a storage unit and chose silence. If he'd finished that sentence, if he'd sent it, called me, come to my door, none of this would have happened. I fold the letter back into the envelope and slip it into my breast pocket beside the note I wrote to Adrienne before I began documenting the poisoning. 2 letters, both incomplete, both written by men trying to shield family from the truth. The difference is that I finished what I started, but finishing isn't the same as closure. There is still one more conversation I have to get through. The courtroom is standing room only when Judge Cresswell Odom delivers 3 sentences that will ripple through my family for the next 15 years or longer. That conversation I needed. It happens here. Franklin County Circuit Court Courtroom 4, December 28th, 2022. Theo sits to my left, Rupert to my right. The 2 letters rest in my breast pocket. Judge Cresswell, Odom, 61. 19 years on the Franklin County bench, known for measured sentences and zero tolerance for violence within families, sits behind the bench with reading glasses on his nose. The courtroom smells of old wood and stale coffee. Renata stands first, flanked by her public defender. Orange jumpsuit wrists, shackled hair, pulled back face, completely blank. Renata Marie Grover. Judge Odom begins his voice, filling the still room. You have been found guilty of attempted first-degree intentional homicide, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You treated a 68-year-old retired teacher like a number on a spreadsheet to be deleted for inheritance math. You poisoned him slowly and deliberately over weeks while sitting at his breakfast table and calling him Dad. He pauses. Renata doesn't blink. The state of Ohio sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Additionally, you will be extradited to Illinois to face first-degree murder charges in the death of Virgil Cullen. You are remanded to custody immediately. No reaction. The bailiff leads her out. She doesn't look at me, doesn't look at Theo, doesn't look back. Dr. Aldrich Fenwick is called next. The physician who sold medical access for $15,000 stands beside his attorney in a suit that probably costs more than my monthly pension. He's 54, 30 years in private practice and about to lose everything. Dr. Fenwick. Judge Odom's tone carries disgust beneath the professional surface. You enabled attempted murder by falsifying medical records and certifying a patient you never once examined. You violated every oath you swore. The Ohio Medical Board has voted unanimously for permanent license revocation. You will never practice medicine again. 5 years probation. If you breach those terms, you will serve the suspended 10-year sentence in full. Twist. 30 years of medical practice, thousands of patients, hundreds of diagnoses, decades of accumulated expertise, erased with one strike of a gavel. Dr. Fenwick will spend the rest of his life as the physician who sold his professional integrity for the price of a used car. The money has been seized as proceeds of crime. He walks out with nothing but a criminal record and a demolished legacy. Nolan is called last. My son stands shackled eyes on the floor. He's lost weight in county jail, face drawn, shoulders caved. Nolan Michael Grover. Judge Odom says you had 3 separate opportunities to phone your father and warn him. You chose silence each time. You participated in the planning, the surveillance, and the conspiracy to commit murder. Your cooperation with this court is the only reason you are not standing here facing life imprisonment. 15 years eligible for parole after 8. You are remanded to custody. Nolan nods once. The bailiff leads him away. 3 rows back in the gallery, Conrad Pruitt catches my eye. He gives one final nod and slips out. I won't see him again, and the case is closed. Pattern interrupt. I taught ethics and morality as an elective in 2014. Justice theory, restorative practices, the distinction between punishment and healing. I taught that justice and healing aren't the same thing. One happens in a courtroom, decided by a judge, formalized in sentencing documents. The other takes decades if it arrives at all. No gavel can make it come faster. Theo's hand finds mine as we rise. His palm is damp and trembling. Do we go now? One more thing I say quietly. Your father has asked to see us, just once. You don't have to go. He looks up at me, 17 years old, but with eyes much older. Will you go? Yes. Then I will too. Franklin County Jail. Visitation room, 30 minutes later. Glass partition, black telephone handsets, metal stools fixed to concrete. The room carries the scent of industrial cleaner and something heavier underneath. Theo sits beside me. We wait. Nolan appears on the other side of the glass, in orange escorted by a guard. He sits, lifts the phone. I do the same. Theo leans close to hear. Thank you for coming, Nolan says. His voice sounds small through the receiver, as though it's coming from somewhere far away. We won't be coming back, I say. Not cruelty, just the truth. Nolan nods, eyes going to Theo. I understand you won't. I don't deserve you to. Theo's jaw tightens. He says nothing. There's nothing left to say that wasn't already said in the courtroom testimony and sentencing statements. Nolan's eyes come back to me. Can you forgive me? The question hangs between us, separated by bulletproof glass and 15 years of choices. I think about the unfinished letter in my pocket, the one that begins, Dad, I need to tell you something about Renata, and ends mid-sentence. I think about the 3 times he said no before he said yes. I think about 45 years of hiding. Pattern interrupt. If you're asking whether a 17-year-old should visit his father in jail, the honest answer is, I don't know. But Theo asked to come, and I've learned that shielding children from the truth only teaches them that lying is how you survive. He recorded his parents planning to kill me. He handed that evidence to the police. He's already been made to grow up too fast. The least I can do is let him be present for the ending. I don't know, I say at last. But I will try. Twist. I offer neither absolution nor condemnation. I will try means that forgiveness isn't a switch you flip in a jail visitation room. It's a process, maybe a lifelong one, and I'm committing to the work without promising the outcome. It's the most honest answer I have, and the only one that doesn't feel like one more lie layered onto a family that was built on them. Nolan closes his eyes, gives one slow nod. That's more than I deserve, thank you. I set the phone down. Stand. Theo stands with me. We walk toward the exit without a backward glance. The guard buzzes us through the first door, then the second. December cold meets us outside, sharp, clean, biting. Theo's hand slips into mine. He doesn't cry, doesn't ask when we'll be back. He just looks up and says, Grandpa, can we go home now? Home, he said, home. Not Nolan's house, not his parents' house. Mine? Some endings are only beginnings in different clothes. 1 month after the arrest, my workshop smells of sawdust and walnut oil again, and I realize this is the first time in 38 days I've felt safe inside my own house. Home came back in the weeks after sentencing, not all at once but cup by cup. Morning by morning, the place stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like somewhere Theo and I were building something new. Late December afternoon, golden winter light coming in flat through the workshop window. Theo stands at the workbench, sanding a curved armrest with long, steady strokes. I showed him how to sand with the grain 3 weeks ago. He's gotten good at it, patient, precise. How's this? He draws his palm across the wood. I look it over, tracing the surface with my fingers. Perfect. Ready for oil. The workshop door opens. Adrienne steps in, cheeks flushed from the December cold, carrying 2 coffees from Brioso. Coffee on North 4th Street. She holds one out to me, regular drip black safe, and keeps the other. Hey Theo, she says. You actually picking something up, or is he just putting you to work? Theo grins. Both. She laughs, and the sound settles into the workshop, like something that belongs there. Something close to ordinary. She's been coming around more often lately, checking in on Theo, standing by Jimena, learning that family doesn't always follow the bloodline. So, she says, sipping her coffee. I'm thinking about law school. Is that crazy? I set down my coffee and meet her eyes. You'll make a good lawyer. How do you know? Because you don't need anyone watching to do the right thing. She blinks, looks away, gives a single nod. The coffee tastes like warmth and safety. Nothing at all like the metallic poison residue that clung to my senses for weeks. Pattern interrupt. Building an oak rocking chair with a 17-year-old who just lost both parents to prison is like teaching history in the wake of a war. You aren't simply making furniture or covering curriculum. You're demonstrating that broken things can be made whole. Every mortise and tenon joint, every smoothed edge, every coat of oil is saying, this is how you take damaged materials and build something that holds weight without giving way. Adrienne, I say come see what we made. She crosses to the corner where the oak rocking chair sits, finished except for its final coat of oil. The curves are clean, the joints tight and invisible, the runners balance perfectly on the floor. She moves around it slowly, eyes following the lines the way I taught her years ago. She runs a hand along the armrest, tests the back slats, checks the rocker curvature. It's beautiful, she says, barely above a whisper. Check the joints, I tell her. I didn't teach you to trust surface finish. She smiles. She tips the chair to inspect the base joinery. That's when she finds it. The inscription carved into the underside of the seat. Small letters burned into the oak for the girl who saved her future grandfather's life. L.R. December 2022. She goes completely still, chair tilted in her hands, reading the words a second time. When she looks up, her eyes are wet. Grandpa. The word cracks something open in my chest. She said it before casually, almost joking, but this time it settles differently. Twist. The inscription isn't figurative. Adrienne saved my life, not by uncovering the poisoning or forwarding that threatening photo, but by trusting me enough to leave when I told her to. If she'd lingered, if she'd pressed for an explanation, or hesitated, Renata would have sensed I was onto her. Adriana gave me room to build the case by believing I understood what I was doing. Trust, it turns out, is its own kind of rescue. You left when I asked, I say quietly. You trusted me without an explanation. That's what kept me alive. She sets the chair down, carefully crosses the workshop in 3 steps, and wraps her arms around me without a word. Theo watches from the workbench with something close to a smile, and I realize this is what family looks like when it's rebuilt from wreckage, imperfect chosen, held together by something more durable than blood. Evening comes in. Adrienne and Theo leave together. She's driving him to pick up textbooks for spring semester. The workshop settles into quiet, broken only by the tick of the wall clock. I sit at the workbench and open my documentation notebook one last time. The pages are dense with dates, symptoms, observations, evidence logs. I write the final entry. December the 30th, 2022. Final entry. The poisoning stopped 38 days ago. The healing hasn't. I close the notebook and place 2 letters side by side on the workbench. The first, a note my wife Corinne wrote me 3 years ago, telling me she loved me, even though my habit of documenting everything drove her to the edge of her patience. The second, Nolan's unfinished draft from October 2022. Beginning, Dad, I need to tell you something about Renata. And breaking off mid-sentence. Pattern interrupt. I taught world history for 38 years, and the lesson never changed. Cycles repeat until someone decides to break them. Nolan grew up watching his mother disappear, learned to avoid consequences, taught himself that silence was safer than the truth. Theo is 17 years old and calling my house home. He's making a different choice. The cycle broke. I look at the 2 letters lying next to each other, one finished, one abandoned, and I understand something I couldn't have grasped before the arrest. Twist. History teaches that human beings can become worse than we imagine, and also better than we dare to hope. Sometimes the same person holds both truths. Nolan was the son who nearly warned me, and the son who said nothing. The husband who objected 3 times, and the husband who went along with it regardless. The father who sat across bulletproof glass and asked whether I could forgive him. And the father serving 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder. He isn't only one of those things. He's all of them. And maybe that's the hardest part, that the people who wound us aren't monsters. They're humans who made catastrophic choices and will spend the rest of their lives inside them. I stand, stretch, check my watch. December sunset paints the workshop walls amber and gold. Tomorrow, Theo starts spring semester at Lincoln High School. Adrienne will come by Sunday with Jimena. Life doesn't hold off until you're done healing before it asks you to keep moving. I switch off the workshop light and pull the door shut. Some stories don't resolve. They just show you how to begin again. And to you listening, I taught history for 38 years. But the most important lesson didn't reach me until I was 68 years old. Trust is earned. It isn't inherited through marriage vows or the comfort of a shared breakfast table. I trusted Renata because she was family. I dismissed the warning signs because I couldn't bring myself to believe that someone I loved could sit across from me every morning and be planning my death. Don't make that mistake. If something feels wrong, if the coffee carries a metallic edge, if someone keeps asking questions, they have no business asking if your body is failing, and no one can explain why. Write it down. Document everything, preserve the evidence. Honor your instincts even when your heart insists you're being unreasonable. I believe the teaching career that shaped my entire adult life was the very thing that saved it. 38 years of recording lesson plans trained me without my knowing it to document a murder conspiracy. When someone inside your family sets out to destroy you, the answer isn't to destroy them in return. It's to protect yourself and to fight for the ones who are still worth saving. One final note. Some details in this story have been changed for narrative purposes and to protect the privacy of those involved. The lesson about recognizing betrayal from within a family and choosing to respond with evidence rather than rage, that part is real. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. Truly. You've just heard one of the hardest things a person can live through, being slowly destroyed by the people sitting at your own table. What this cost me is something I'm still counting: my son. Decades of trust, weeks of my health I won't get back. But I believe God kept my mind clear when my body was failing, and that the same instinct that made me a teacher for 38 years is what made me write everything down, instead of simply dying quietly. That is not a small thing. Here is what I want you to carry away from this. If something in your home feels wrong, the coffee, the silences, the questions no one should be asking, document it. Write the date. Write what you noticed. Trust that record more than you trust your own desire to believe the best. Never mistake familiarity for safety. The people who have access to your kitchen, your finances, your daily routine are also the people with the most opportunity to harm you. If someone you love is being pressured into something they know is wrong, give them a way out before they convince themselves silence is easier. Nolan said no 3 times. No one gave him a door. And if you are sitting on a truth that could protect someone, send the message. Finish the letter. Make the call. Adrian's single warning changed everything. These are father stories that don't make the evening news, but they happen. Dad's revenge, when it comes, doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be documented, patient, and one step ahead. If this reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment. I read everyone. And if you haven't yet subscribed to His Hidden Revenge, there is more to come. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourself out there.